Chapter 1. Wu's Orphanage, an old orphanage in London. This is a square building surrounded by high railings. The interior looks very shabby, but it is very neat and spotless. The time when the orphanage was established is unknown. Although it has a long history, there is nothing commendable about it. There are no famous businessmen, politicians, or scholars here, nor can it attract more donations, or the kind-hearted people who came to adopt. This is just an ordinary, dilapidated orphanage on the verge of bankruptcy, and the manager, Mrs. Gary, is just an ordinary old woman. However, this orphanage has an extraordinary reputation on the other side of the world, in a society that is inaccessible to mortals, and this reputation will surely become even louder from today on. Just today, June 11, 1991, this orphanage welcomed a special guest. Dong dong dong. A knock on the door reached Mrs. Gary's ears. Nestled in the recliner, she put down her needlework and hurriedly walked towards the door. Who on earth would come to visit such an old orphanage on such a rainy day? She was so confused that she picked up an old black umbrella from the shelf at the door, opened it and walked towards the door. Standing at the door is an old man. He is tall and thin, with long silver hair and a silver beard that can even reach his waist. Outside of his robe, the old man is wearing a purple cloak and a dirty coat. The dirty black umbrella. The robe was already soaked, and the half-moon glasses were full of water drops. Mrs. Gary is already 60 years old, but she feels that this old man is much older than her. What is amazing is that this old man, who is old enough to be her father, in Mrs. Gary's opinion, looks much more energetic than she was, his beautiful blue eyes full of bright life. "Oh, come in quickly." Mrs. Gary hurriedly pulled out a large key from the keyring and opened the rusty door of the orphanage with great effort. The weather has been really bad recently. The children's clothes have been put away. I haven't done anything in 2 days. That's not true, the old man agreed, following Mrs. Gary into the main entrance of the orphanage. He looked around, a trace of nostalgia flashing in his eyes. This place hasn't changed at all, it's still so neat and tidy, he sighed. Definitely. Mrs. Gary took out a clean towel from the cabinet and handed it to the wet old man, proudly saying, "This has always been like this here. Although we cannot provide wealthy living conditions, we will still do our best. Giving children a good living environment has been like this since Mrs. Cole. Unfortunately, not many people will come to help us, and not many people will come to help these poor little people." As he spoke, this somewhat garrulous person, the old woman, couldn't help complaining again. "Have you been here before? I don't seem to remember you." She was a little curious. "Oh, that was many years ago," the old man recalled. "It was about 57, or was it 58 years ago? I can't remember clearly. It was Mrs. Cole who received me, and she provided me with great help." "I'm afraid you are over 80 years old, right?" Mrs. Gary asked casually as she prepared tea for the guests. "Believe me, I'm older than you think." The old man finally dried his beard and hair with a towel, and then chatted with the somewhat lonely old woman. After a while, the old woman, who had satisfied her desire to chat, remembered the business. "Well, sir, you, oh, how rude, I actually forgot to ask your name." "Albus Dumbledore," the old man replied. "My profession is the principal of a private school. I am here to find a boy named Ting Yet." "Oh, Ting Yet." At the mention of this name, the old woman's cloudy eyes seemed to light up. "Little Ting Yet is the pride of our place. There is no child more smart and sensible than him. I see, growing up with this child, I've seen all kinds of naughty and mischievous little pitiful people. You know, that's what my career is like, but I've never seen such a smart and sensible little adult." Mrs. Gary's face showed great pride and joy, and she introduced non-stop, "Little Ting Yi can talk at the age of 1. Since then, he has never cried with us, whether he was hungry or being beaten. When the older kids bully him, he works hard to face it alone. Oh, he is such a strong kid." Mrs. Gary refilled Dumbledore's black tea and continued, "This child is so cute. He has been learning to read since he could read. He reads newspapers, magazines, dictionaries, novels, he can read everything. This child has a smart mind. Learns quickly and can read newspapers fluently at the age of 3. Just like introducing her proud grandson, the old woman spent a long time introducing the 10-year-old boy named Ting Yet. Dumbledore listened patiently and gradually developed a liking for this child. Basic impression: smart, sensible, studious, hardworking, kind, etc. Although he knew that there was more or less subjective favoritism from the old woman, this impression was generally perfect. Chapter 2. So, Dumbledore asked Mrs. Gary carefully, has anything weird or strange happened to this child? Strange things. Upon hearing this word, the smile on the old woman's face disappeared instantly, and she criticized in a sharp voice, nothing strange has ever happened to little Ting Yi. He is a real person. A good boy like this has met with this unfortunate fate, and an upright gentleman would never doubt such a good boy. Yes, yes, I didn't doubt him, I just wanted to get to know him comprehensively. Even a great magician and principal like Dumbledore couldn't deal with this almost irritated old woman at this time. It took a while to convince the old woman that she meant no harm. How is this possible? He thought to himself, the pen of acceptance clearly wrote his name on the book of admission. This proves that he is not a muggle or a squib. There is indeed magical ability. This kind of magic ability will always cause all kinds of accidents before the little necromancer can truly control magic, but as the manager, Mrs. Gary didn't notice anything. Is this because his ability is too low or? I thought here, he recalled that person again, and then put the questions and thoughts in his heart. So at the end of the conversation, Dumbledore finally made his request, as the principal of Hogwarts School, I hope to recruit Ting Yi as a student of our school. The purpose of my trip is to get him admission. Notice and want to meet with him. Oh, it's another school's admission notice. I know our little Ting Yi will always be recognized. Mrs. Gary responded cheerfully, but at present, you are the only principal who comes in person, but this requires he made his own decision, and even Eden gave him a place. With that said, Mrs. Gary climbed up from the chair, let me take you to his room. Xiao Ting Yi should be reading a book at the moment. With that said, she led Dumbledore up the stairs. In Wu's orphanage, Yeting is a legend. When he was only a few months old, he was picked up at the door of the orphanage by Mrs. Gary, who went out to get a newspaper. At that time, he was wrapped in a set of adult clothes, and the only thing that could prove his identity was a plastic card with the word Yeting written on it. Combined with his Asian appearance, Yeting became his name. From a very young age, Yeting showed his genius. Whether he is learning to speak, walk, or read, he is much faster than his peers. And he is quite sensible and never lets adults worry. Although Yeting's skin color looks different in Wu's orphanage, with his maturity and wisdom beyond his years, Yeting has easily become the king of children in the orphanage, regardless of whether the children are older or younger than him. All convinced by him. Since Yeting was 5 years old, the caregivers at Wu's orphanage have felt that their workload has been reduced a lot, the children have gradually become obedient and sensible under Yeting's management, and some older children even take the initiative to help with some tasks. Housework. Not only that, Yeting is also the only genius in the nearby elementary school. In class, no problem can stump him. Both the teachers and the principal are full of praise for him. Even after graduating from elementary school, he received a letter of admission from the famous Eton College. But no one knows that this famous genius is actually a time traveler from another world. In his previous life, Yeting was a college student in Meichen. His family was relatively middle class, and his university was one of the top 10 universities in the country. His major is computer software, which is very popular at the moment. Not only is he a winner in life, he is also considered to be above average among his peers. In addition, Yeting is originally an otaku, and he is quite involved in various acts. Before traveling back in time, he happened to take advantage of the May Day holiday to watch Avengers Alliance 4. Due to his maternal solo, he was always alone. As a result, thunder fell from the sky on the way back to school, and the unlucky Yeting was engulfed by lightning. Disappeared without a trace and was regarded as an urban legend for a while. It was this accident that led to his time travel. In fact, he was not struck to death by lightning. At that time, Yeting only saw a flash of lightning, and a bolt of thunder suddenly flashed in front of him. The thunder split open a black crack, the air, sand, and gravel, including himself, everything was sucked dry by this crack. Jing. Only after that did he realize that this was the legendary space rift. And he fell into an endless fantasy space from this hole. This chaos space is full of weird and dangerous turbulence. Occasionally, similar cracks can appear suddenly. These cracks often only exist for a moment. Then it disappears without a trace, but there is always something ejected from the hole, all kinds of living and non-living things, ranging from planets to dust, and then they are sucked into the dangerous turbulence and disappear. In Yeting's opinion, This space should be the super time and space channel connecting various universes outside the universe, and the space cracks lead to different universes. The cracks appear due to accidents, and then are automatically repaired in an instant. Only in rare cases can they be repaired automatically. It will bring the matter in the universe into the super space-time channel, and the turbulence is the legendary space-time turbulence, and all the matter sucked into it will be destroyed. Chapter 3. Since arriving here, his daily experience has been to wander aimlessly and immortally in the cracks of the turbulent currents, and he has survived with weird shit luck. He has been almost sucked into the chaos countless times in the current, but every time it is accidentally pulled out by another turbulent current, and then continues to drift under the balance of the suction of the turbulent current. As time goes by, he feels that his body has changed, his body is getting younger and younger, his height and body shape are getting smaller and smaller, his clothes appear to be getting bigger and bigger, and when his body is small enough at a certain level, he felt that his thinking ability began to deteriorate. He felt like his age was regressing and his brain was undergoing reverse growth. In this case, even if he is not turned into powder by the turbulent currents, he may turn back into a fertilized egg due to the regression of his body's age, and then disappear. However, luck favored him again. Before he completely became an embryo, he happened to fall into a crack, and passed through the crack intact and came out from the other end. In this way, he came to a new world and appeared in this orphanage. Door. At this time, he had regressed into a baby. Most of his clothes and belongings were lost in the time and space channel, leaving only his underwear and a signed white subway card, which gave him the title of the previous life. Name, Yeting. As Yeting grew up, he began to notice the changes brought about by his experience in the time and space channel. These changes made him feel that even if he did not obtain the system like the protagonist in the novel after time travel, he could still be regarded as a genius. The Chosen One. He discovered that he had the ability to learn and grow infinitely. This ability was somewhat similar to Teacher Saitama in One Punch Superman, but different. Any ability, and skill he possesses can become infinitely stronger through constant learning and exercise. As long as you exercise, your body will become stronger, as long as you study, you can master new knowledge, as long as you hone your will become stronger, as long as you think diligently, your intelligence will become more developed. This is equivalent to the fact that there are no limiters in all aspects. Even the ability originally determining the speed of progress will gradually become stronger with practice. This made him obsessed with learning and exercising for a long time, until he realized something was wrong and he was too different, so he slowed down his studies. He also discovered that he has an excellent ability to understand time and space. He can perceive distances without reference and can also judge the passage of time without a clock. These are undoubtedly brought to him by his experience in the time and space channel. The benefits of. In addition, as he grew older, he began to discover that his body could affect and change matter unconsciously. He could move the water glass, make the spoon disappear, feel time start to slow down when he concentrated, and even occasionally summoning items from other world, etc. With his mature heart and self-control ability, he gradually effectively prevented accidents caused by unconscious emotions due to momentary excitement, and through constant experiments, he gradually became able to consciously use this, which is actually called magic ability. Now he can move small objects with his thoughts, and can use some abilities related to time and space like instinct. For example, you can briefly control the flow of time in your body like Emi Yakiritsuga's inherent time control or the bullet time in the Matrix, and you can use the summoning technique. It will fail in most cases, but occasionally it can be summoned. Something from Otherworld. To this day, his treasure chest is filled with all kinds of weird Otherworld items, including a forehead protector from Konoha village that seems to be from the world of Naruto, a tachi that looks like a shallow, and a Grandmaster ball, a novel titled The Energetic Argonian Maid, all in Nordic text, but with illustrations, an H-book written by Ari Kashiwagi, and an engraved I hope my sisters can grow up with me and marry together coin, the wishing coin that Hilvana's Windrunner threw into the Dalaran fountain, a ring called Duran's Lost Ring, etc. Most of the things he summoned were non-living things, with the only exception being a little white cat named Hiraju who was currently lying on the windowsill basking in the sun, the cat demon from Guardian Cat Girl Hiju. Just the little guy was still a baby when he was summoned, and he was raised by Yeting himself. Now Fiju is 2 years old. Perhaps because he is a cat demon, Fiju is already quite intelligent and spiritual. He is very looking forward to the day when Fiju can truly speak and transform into a human form. Until today, Yeting felt that he had just returned to England in the 1980s and 1990s. He feels that he has more than 20 or 30 years of experience and a powerful gold finger. Although he does not have a system, he is also convinced that he can become the world's richest man and reach the pinnacle of life in the new era of the internet. Until he opened the door and saw the old man with a white beard in front of him. "Hello, Mr. Yeting, I am Albus Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts." Chapter 4. Dumbledore? Meow meow meow. Where am I? Who I am? What am I doing? Didn't you agree to be reborn 39 years ago, get the gold finger, use your foresight to marry Baphomet, and reach the pinnacle of life? Why did Dumbledore show up? I should have known earlier. Isn't the Woos orphanage the same place where Voldemort stayed when he was a child? No wonder I seem to have seen this name somewhere. At this moment, Yeting had countless thoughts in his mind, but in the end he buried all his doubts deep in his heart and remained silent on the surface. "Hello, Mr. Dumbledore, and Mrs. Gary," he said, stepping aside. "Please come in and sit down." "Oh, no need, Xiao Tingyi." Mrs. Gary waved her hand with a smile. "Mr. Dumbledore is the principal of a school. He wants to talk to you alone. I, an old woman, will not disturb you," she said and closed the door. Soon I heard the sound of crunching coming downstairs outside the door. "Well, hello, kid." Dumbledore looked at Yeting gently and introduced himself. "I am the principal of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry." "Hello, Mr. Dumbledore," Yeting greeted calmly, but there was a faint excitement in his eyes. This was because he was excited about traveling to Otherworld, but it caused Dumbledore's misunderstanding. "You don't seem to be surprised by the term magic. It seems that you have realized that you are different." Dumbledore raised his eyebrows playfully, snapped his fingers, and the teacup on Yeting's desk was automatically filled. "Had black tea? Oh. Cool." Seeing this scene, Yeting was a little envious, but he also showed his hand to Dumbledore. The spoon in the tea tray flew up tremblingly, and then dropped into the cup. This surprised Dumbledore. He had never seen a young child possess such powerful magic before mastering magic. The average necromancer has insufficient magic capacity and lack of control over magic at a young age. Even an ordinary necromancer has difficulty casting magic without the help of a wand. Although this trick is a bit rough in the application of magic, it is compared to an adult necromancer. This can already prove that Yeting is also an out-and-out genius in magic. "I thought about it when I discovered this kind of super ability," Yeting said in a pretentious way. "I think I am not the only one who has magic, or super ability, but people around me think that magic or super ability are not the same thing. It doesn't exist. I feel like there must be some organization covering up all this. Maybe they are my kind, maybe they will come to me." "You are really a smart boy. So, would you like to join Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry and learn more about magic with the little necromancers of your age?" Dumbledore asked kindly. "Definitely, Mr. Dumbledore, I am looking forward to my future life in the academy." Yeting smiled, showing a childlike expression of eagerness to try. Although he is 31 years old in his 2 lifetimes, he is still very excited about traveling to this fairy tale world of his childhood, and he is even more looking forward to becoming a student of Hogwarts, especially the novelty of magic, knowledge that has never been touched and only exists in fantasy. What internet? What is the richest man in the world? What is Baphomet? It doesn't matter now. What wealth can compare to the power of magic? What other beauties can compare to heroines and supporting actresses such as Miss Know-It-All Hermione and the Veela half-breed sisters Fleur? Although there are still villains such as Death Eaters and Voldemort causing trouble in the wizarding world, and there are always dangers during the 7 years at school, the overall danger is not great. In fact, the White Road Necromancer's strength has always occupied the upper hand. Feng, the final crisis was also a situation caused by Dumbledore himself planning to kill Voldemort completely. Moreover, opportunities and dangers coexist. Yeting's gold finger does not have clear novice guidance and training routes like System and others, so if he wants to further develop his own abilities, especially his time and space abilities, he should learn magic as a reference. It was the best idea at the moment. He also thought that one day he could go one step further and travel between worlds and experience a variety of different lives. Next, Yeting and Dumbledore chatted for a long time. Although he had already known about it from novels and movies, Yeting still asked a lot of questions about the magical world out of curiosity like a child, and Dumbledore patiently answered them one by one. Finally, Dumbledore stood up and said, it's getting late now. We should leave for Diagon Alley, where we can buy some necessities for admission to Hogwarts. Do you have enough pounds? Definitely, Mr. Dumbledore. Yeting dug out his wallet from the drawer and took out a stack of pounds. In fact, I have been submitting articles to children's magazines, and I have saved a lot of royalties. I think it's probably enough used. That's good. Dumbledore nodded with satisfaction. Then let's set off now. Fiju, let's go. Before leaving, Yeting opened his school bag to Fiju on the windowsill. The little white cat jumped in lightly and skillfully, leaving only one head exposed. After bidding farewell to Mrs. Gary and the friends who came out to watch the fun, the two left the Woos orphanage and walked into a deserted alley under the leadership of Dumbledore. Chapter 5. How do we get to Diagon Alley? Yeting was a little curious. Apparition, this is a very convenient spell, but it is not very comfortable. Dumbledore took out the staff. Hold on to me, child, and be careful not to spit it out. Yeting felt his eyes blurred for a while, and then the world began to spin. However, in this chaos, he saw a clear spatial context. It was a narrow spatial passage that could barely squeeze two people into it. He felt like he was sucked into a narrow rubber tube and then spit out, and the space he was originally in was exchanged with another space. In the blink of an eye, they appeared in an alley. Perhaps it was due to his ability. Yeting himself didn't have any special feelings, but Fiju in his school bag was meowing meow, obviously feeling a little uncomfortable. How do you feel? Dumbledore looked at Yeting with concern. Necromancers who experience apparition for the first time will have some adverse reactions. I feel great. Yeting stroked the kitten's head soothingly, finally calming her down. I feel like I can come a few more times. Oh, you are indeed born to be a necromancer. There are always some geniuses appearing in Woo's orphanage, Dumbledore sighed. He definitely said the last sentence to himself and did not let anyone else hear him. The two walked forward in the alley, and finally stopped in front of an inconspicuous small bar. The Leaky Cauldron, Dumbledore introduced, this is a very famous place. The Leaky Cauldron has been enchanted to ensure that ordinary muggles will not discover this place without anyone leading them. This is a small and dirty bar. People who are in a hurry don't even glance at this small shop. Their eyes slide from the big bookstore on one side of the street to the record store on the other side, as if they can't see it at all. Although this is a well-known place in the necromancer world, it is really dark and shabby inside. 9 elderly women sat in a corner, drinking small glasses of sherry, and one of them was smoking a long pipe. A young man wearing a tall hat was chatting with the old bartender. The old bartender's head was as bare as a swollen walnut. The buzz of chatter stopped immediately as they both walked in, and everyone nodded and smiled at Dumbledore, who responded politely. The bar owner picked up a cup and said, Professor Dumbledore, will you come to pick up the new students in person? Yes, a new student from a Muggle orphanage, Dumbledore replied. Is little Harry okay? He's going to Hogwarts this year too. Tom seemed to be telling something pleasant, and everyone else nearby listened attentively. Harry will be picked up and dropped off by Hagrid. Dumbledore explained, and then took Yeting to the courtyard, where there was only a glimpse of walls made of bricks. The entrance to Diagon Alley is here. You have to remember the way to enter Diagon Alley. Dumbledore used his staff to gently draw 3 times at a special location on the stone brick wall and reminded, Okay, stand back, Mr. Yet. The brick that they had struck with the wand shook and began to move. A small hole appeared in the middle, and the hole became larger and larger. Soon, an archway wide enough for 2 people to pass side by side appeared in front of them, leading to a winding, cobbled street with no end in sight. Turning around, Dumbledore opened his arms and said to Yeting, Welcome to Diagon Alley. Following Dumbledore, Yeting stepped into the magical world for the first time. He understands that his life will no longer be ordinary. The fame and wealth of ordinary people will no longer be his pursuit, and his future will be accompanied by legends. Everything will start in the small alley in front of you. This small alley was filled with all kinds of strange shops, as well as vendors standing on the street, and people buying things. Most of them knew Dumbledore and nodded to him. The old man led Yeting through the alley, nodding to others while introducing Yeting to what each store sold, and Yeting needed to buy something there. Finally they arrived in front of a snow-white building, which was much higher than the surrounding shops. This is Gringotts. Dumbledore introduced. Gringotts is the bank of the necromancer world. You need to exchange Muggle currency here for necromancer gold galleons, silver sickles, and copper nuts. Beside the shiny bronze door of Gringotts stood an elf in a crimson and gold uniform. They are about a head shorter than Yeting, have dark and clever faces, pointed beards, and very slender fingers and feet. The goblin bowed to them as they entered. Then a second door appeared in front of them, it was silver, and the following words were engraved on the two doors: "Come in, stranger, but beware of what will happen if you are greedy. Asking blindly and getting something for nothing will be severely punished, so if you want to take a piece of wealth from our underground vault that has never been yours, thief, you have been warned, beware not of treasure but of evil." Chapter 6. The two goblins bowed to them and led them into a tall marble hall. There were about 100 goblins sitting on high stools behind a row of long counters. Some used copper scales to weigh coins, and some used eyepieces to examine gems, while making hasty entries in the large ledger. Yeting walked to the counter, took out a stack of pounds from his pocket and said, "Hello, I need to convert pounds into galleons." An old goblin stepped forward and took the pound. "The exchange rate between pounds and galleons is 5 to 1. Are you sure you want to convert all these 200 pounds into galleons?" "Yes," Yeting nodded, "and exchange all the galleons for Zico." 1 galleon is equal to 17 sickles, the old elf explained. After a while, a younger goblin handed Yeting a heavy bag. Next, Dumbledore took Yeting to start purchasing. "First, you need a wand," he said, "and Ollivanders makes the best." The shop was small and shabby, and the gold sign on the door had peeled off, which read, "Ollivanders, making exquisite wands since 382 BC. In the dusty window, a solitary wand sat on a faded purple cushion. "How are you, Ollivander, my old friend?" Dumbledore greeted him warmly as soon as he entered the door. A wizened old man appeared from the corner and hugged Dumbledore warmly. "Hello, old friend," he said in retro English in a soft tone, "why do you have time to come to my place?" "Oh, I went to pick up a student from the Muggles, whose orphanage, you know." Dumbledore blinked, and then introduced, "That's him, Mr. Yet. Although he was born as a Muggle, he has been able to control it skillfully. My own magic." Well, no wonder Ollivander came forward, stared at Yeting with sharp eyes, and took out a long tape measure with silver scales from his pocket. "Okay, Mr. Yet, come on. Let me see. Which arm do you use your wand with?" he asked. Yeting said, "I am accustomed to using my right hand." "Put your arms up, okay." He began to measure Yeting, starting from his shoulders to his fingertips. While measuring, Ollivander said, "Every Ollivander wand contains super powerful magical substances, which is its essence, Mr. Ting Yi. We use unicorn hair and phoenix tail feathers. And dragon nerves. Every Ollivander wand is unique, as no two unicorns, dragons, or phoenixes are exactly the same. Definitely, you should never use a wand that belongs to another necromancer. It will have such a good effect." Ollivander was chattering as he shuttled between the shelves, climbed up and down the ladder, and kept the tape measure to automatically measure Yeting. Although his nagging words made people sleepy, Yeting still listened carefully with all his energy. Although he already knew something about it in the original work, he was still very curious about everything in the magical world. "Okay," Ollivander said, and the tape measure fell to the floor and rolled up into a ball. "Then, Mr. Yet, try this one. It's made of sycamore wood and phoenix feather core. It's 12½ inches long. You can give it a try." Yeting took the wand and felt something was wrong as soon as he waved it. Sure enough, the next moment, a golden red flame burst out from the tip of the wand, igniting the cabinet in front of him with a breath. Yeting even felt that he was almost summoning a living phoenix. Clear water like a spring. Dumbledore waved his wand quickly, and a gurgling clear spring emerged from the tip of the wand and immediately extinguished the flames. "It seems this wand is not suitable for you." Ollivander shook his head. He took out another one made of beechwood and snake nerve, 9 inches long. "Try it." The accident this time was a puff of black smoke, and the cabinets and boxes that were enveloped were quickly corroded with ugly holes as if they had been splashed with acid, and they were finally restored to their original state. Next, Ollivander asked Yeting to test wands one after another. It seemed that the more experiments he performed, the happier he became. However, accidents happened again and again. Both Ollivander and Dumbledore learned the lesson. Always have your wand ready to prevent sudden flames, frost, or explosions from causing any irreparable consequences. Thanks to the dirty windows of Ollivander's shop, passers-by outside didn't notice all this. Finally, before the wand box overwhelmed Yeting, Ollivander finally stopped this experiment that made no progress. Oh, what a picky customer. He sighed. Is there any magic cast on that place? This child's magic is even stronger than him. Mr. Ollivander, what are you talking about? I don't understand. Yeting knew that he was referring to Voldemort, but at this time he still pretended to be ignorant. But Ollivander changed the subject dryly. No, it's nothing, you will know later, let's go back to the topic of the wand. This is the best wand I can think of for you. He stumbled and pulled out an exquisite purple wand from a large box and handed it to Yeting. Chapter 7. Ollivander introduced the wand. The material is the tail feathers of a particularly ancient phoenix bird, and the core of a century-old elder tree. It is 12 inches long, flexible and elastic. It is one of the proudest works of my life. I will never find it again. With such precious materials, it is impossible to make a more powerful wand. I just hope this wand won't have another accident. Yeting was exhausted from the frequent surprises. He no longer had the energy to consider whether the wand was powerful. He just wanted to end this experiment as soon as possible, but he was still cautious. Took the wand. The moment he took the wand, the whole shop trembled with wands, and a wonderful feeling was transmitted from the wand to his hand, a sense of smoothness and tameness like an arm. As if you can easily use magic without any effort. Yeting waved the wand gently. This time without any accidents, the tip of the wand flashed with brilliant silver light, and then all the wands stopped trembling. It's wonderful, Ollivander exclaimed loudly. It's such an honor to see this wand find its owner in my lifetime. Then, he turned to look at Yeting and reminded, wands with phoenix feather cores are powerful and picky about their owners, and the phoenix king bird is especially so. The elder wand is more difficult to control than any other wand. Moreover, the user's talent is the highest required, and any necromancer who can use an elder wand is destined to be extraordinary. If you can become the owner of such a wand, you are destined to have a legendary future. When he said the last words, he looked at Dumbledore. Dumbledore smiled slightly. Child, I am very happy that you can have such a wand. I am starting to look forward to your performance at Hogwarts. Yeting put away the wand with satisfaction and asked, so how much does this wand cost? No money. Ollivander glanced at the wand reluctantly and refused. I am satisfied to see the greatest masterpiece of my life meet its true owner. I hope you can make good use of him. Watching Dumbledore and Yeting leave, Ollivander murmured to himself, it's Wu's orphanage again, and such a genius again. No, it's an even more incredible genius than that person. I hope he doesn't. You will follow in that person's footsteps, otherwise the magic world will. Next, we have to buy you a Hogwarts uniform, Dumbledore said after walking out of the wand shop. Mrs. Malkin's robe shop, we usually go there. Madame Malkin is a short, fat witch with a pleasant smile and dressed in purple. Do you want to buy Hogwarts school uniforms, dear? She said before Yeting could speak. We have a lot of students here. Oh, hello, Mr. Dumbledore. Are you here to pick up the students in person? I didn't notice you just now. The two greeted each other with a smile. Yeting noticed another young man walking out of the back hall. He was a head shorter than Yeting. Due to his ever-improving body, he had always been taller than most of his peers. He was wearing a drab and old-fashioned black robe. Yeting thought it was extremely ugly. Excuse me, is that the uniform of Hogwarts? He pointed helplessly at the young man. Oh, yes, dear. Mrs. Malkin took Yeting to a high stool. But if you are not satisfied, you can ask for lace or something. Oh, can you stand on this stool? Let me measure you. Yeting was still dissatisfied with this old-fashioned robe. He made an unexpected request, can I design my own robe and then customize it here? Design your own robe? Mrs. Malkin's voice immediately rose an octave higher. No one has ever made such a request. We are professionals here, but if you must do this, it's not impossible. The voice of the last sentence was much lower. Obviously, Yeting's request made her a little sad. She felt that her professionalism was being underestimated. So Yeting skillfully drew a sketch on the paper. It was the uniform of the students of the Magician's Guild in the Moon World in his memory. The hem was slightly shorter than the robes of Hogwarts, and the design was much more fashionable. It felt like a product that was combined with the design style of the Muggle world. In addition, he also drew matching shirts, vests, trousers, etc. Dumbledore and Mrs. Malkin stood behind Yeting curiously. wanting to see what he could draw. As the clothes gradually took shape under Yeting's skillful brushwork, the two people's eyes gradually became serious. I have to say, your new student is indeed a genius. Mrs. Malkin sighed to Dumbledore. This is not something that ordinary children can design. If he becomes a fashion designer, he should be able to make a lot of money. Galleons. Dumbledore nodded empathetically. Ever since he saw Yeting today, he had never stopped being surprised by him. Finally, after finishing the drawing of the product, Yeting stopped comparing. Mrs. Malkin behind him immediately took the drawing and looked at it carefully. Chapter 8. You are awesome, my dear. I have never seen such a beautiful design. Mrs. Malkin sighed after carefully reading each picture. Oh, these are all Muggle styles. Yeting shook his head modestly. Then can I order a uniform like this? Definitely, I can't wait to see what the finished product will look like. Mrs. Malkin looked a little excited, and then she asked Yeting a little embarrassedly, if you can allow me to others make uniforms of the same style, so every year during the 7 years you stay at Hogwarts, I will make a custom-made uniform for you using the best materials for free, what do you think? Mrs. Mojin looked at Yeting expectantly. Yeting thought about it and felt that it was not a loss for him, so he readily agreed. Later, they went to Flourish and Blott's bookstore to buy textbooks. Yeting not only purchased a complete set of textbooks for the 1st grade, but also purchased all the textbooks from Charms and Shapeshifting to the 7th grade. In addition, the curious Yeting also bought a copy of A Simple Introduction to Ancient Magic Texts and Hogwarts, A School History. Although you are still young, I am still very happy that there are still people interested in ancient magic texts. When seeing Yeting's choice, Dumbledore said, there were only 2 students who chose ancient magic texts last semester. It was really too few. Ms. Babuling will definitely like you. Later he added, but the ancient magic text is a little difficult, I hope you can be mentally prepared. I just want to study where magic comes from. Yeting picked up A Simple Introduction to Ancient Magic Texts and turned to the title page. This book says that modern spells are simplified ancient magic texts and magic items. The production is also related to ancient magic texts. I think that by studying ancient magic texts, I can find out where the power of magic comes from. I have to say, you will definitely be able to enter Ravenclaw in the future. Dumbledore looked at him with a somewhat pleased look. After asking about the significance of each branch, Yeting commented, the power of a necromancer comes from the knowledge of magic, so only a necromancer who pursues knowledge can be considered a real necromancer. In this regard, Ravenclaw is indeed more in line with me. After paying the money, Yeting was faced with a lot of thick books. It was impossible for his small school bag, relative to the books, to hold so many books. Yeting, who was helpless, had to look at them with helpless eyes. To Dumbledore. You can use the shrinking spell to shrink these books and put them in your bag. Dumbledore took out his wand and tapped the stack of books. Shrink quickly. The books immediately shrank several times until each one was the size of a fingernail. Fiju, who was in her school bag, saw this scene and moved forward curiously, looking at these miniature books. If you're going to get them back, the mantra is to get bigger fast, he added. Yeting took out his new wand with interest, imitated Dumbledore's posture and pointed at the small book while chanting the spell. Get big fast. The file size book on the fingernail expanded until it became the original file size. Fiju was caught off guard and hit her nose by the enlarged book. She shrank back into her school bag with a meow sound. Yeting touched her head comfortingly, be careful, little one. Then, he tried to cast another spell on the book. Shrink quickly. Immediately, the book changed back to the file size of a fingernail. Dumbledore watched in amazement. Yeting just watched him cast the shrinking spell once, and he was able to learn it immediately, and the first time he cast it, it was a perfect success. Not only that, he was able to draw inferences from one example and successfully cast the enlargement spell in the same manner. Such ability and learning ability were simply unprecedented. Although you have heard it several times today, I still have to say that you are indeed a genius. He commented. Yeting put all the shrunken books into his school bag, and told Fiju not to damage the books, and then followed Dumbledore to buy other items. He bought a pewter cauldron that could be folded and stirred automatically, a set of glass and crystal medicine bottles, a telescope, and a balance in the crucible shop. In addition, in the magic pet shop, he refused to buy an owl and planned to find a way to summon an animal to deliver messages. But he still bought some expensive cat food for Fiju. He believes that the cat food used by necromancers may be more suitable for cat monsters than that used by muggles. He hopes that this will allow Hiju to grow up quickly, or at least be able to awaken the power of monsters earlier. This series of expenses made his originally bulging wallet empty, which also made him determined to use his prophetic advantages and magical power to make a lot of money in the Muggle world during the next summer vacation. Failure to buy the best crucible and experimental supplies made him feel ashamed of his status as a time traveler. At Fortka's ice cream shop, Dumbledore treated Yeting to an ice cream, and he bought a cockroach dumpling himself, which made Yeting feel sick. Finally, Dumbledore used apparition to send Yeting back to the orphanage. Before leaving, Dumbledore said to him, "Mr. Yet, you are a true genius and a good boy with a kind heart. I hope you can make good use of the power of magic. Remember, it is not his power that determines a person, but his choice." After saying that, he winked playfully and disappeared in front of Yeting. Chapter 9. After returning from Diagon Alley, Yeting locked himself in his room and began to study the magic of this world. Through experiments and research, he roughly understood the principle of magic in the world of Harry Potter, which is a spell that uses magic to influence the rules. Magic is generated originally from creatures, so only necromancers and magical creatures with magical powers can cast spells. Using the spells of this world requires a strong will, standard pronunciation, and gestures. Strong will determines the goals and effects of magic, while pronunciation and gestures are essential catalysts. Through these, magic can affect the rule in a way that directly achieves the result. Compared with directly using magic to roughly affect reality, magic is similar to completing tasks directly through the console in an RPG game. Not only is it more effective, but it can also produce things like restoration spells, flying spells, etc., which completely violate the principles of energy conservation and entropy increase. Wait for the spells of the basic rules. As for the wand, as we all know, the magical creatures in the Harry Potter world have stronger magic than the necromancer. The wand is made of materials from these magical creatures and some special wood. It is a magic organizer and converter. When a necromancer knows enough about a certain magic and is skilled enough in spell casting, he can omit spells and wands when casting spells, and cast spells silently and with his bare hands. This is silent and wandless spell casting, which makes casting spells faster and more difficult to detect. However, since the catalytic effect of silent chanting on spells is lower than that of chanting magic spells, the processing and conversion efficiency of magic power with bare hands is lower than that of using a wand, so the spell casting effect much worse and much less efficient. With Yeting's talent, he quickly learned relatively simple and commonly used magic such as the wand glowing spell, floating spell, and restoration spell, but he couldn't learn more in the room. On the one hand, knowledge such as fire-making spells, potions, etc. requires suitable venues and materials. On the other hand, overly complex spells are not only prone to accidents that are difficult to recover, but may also alarm Mrs. Gary and other friends in the orphanage. With no other choice, Yeting had to suppress his curiosity about magic and look forward to the day when school starts. The wait is always long, and finally, September 1st is here. Yeting arrived at King's Cross Station at 9 o'clock. He hoped to enter the train early so that he could freely choose a box and not have to stay with people he was not interested in. At Hogwarts, apart from the protagonist group, there were only George and brother Fred. Cedric Diggory and pretty girls were able to get his attention. There were quite a lot of people coming and going at the train station at this time. Yeting, who was standing between platforms 9 and 10, had to look around carefully, hoping to find an opportunity to enter platform 9 3/4 without anyone noticing. Soon, several necromancers wearing strange robes walked up to him, stupidly bumped into the wall in front of him, and then disappeared one by one. Yeting gritted his teeth, suppressed the desire to complain in his heart, and followed these people towards the wall of platform 9 3/4. In the blink of an eye, he felt that he had passed through a door, and then his eyes became dim and bright. In front of him is an old-fashioned red steam locomotive with a Hogwarts Express sign hanging on it. With Yeting's ability, he could clearly feel that he was in a special space, which was a phase that coincided with the space where the original King's Cross railway station was located. It's really unscientific to be able to do this with magic. He sighed and followed the crowd onto the train. At this time, there were not many people in the train car, but Yeting still sat in an empty compartment in the later car. He noticed that the older the necromancer was, the more he sat forward. The new students are concentrated in the last few carriages. After putting his luggage away, Yeting opened his backpack and released Fei Zhu, who had been holding it in for a long time. Then he took out a copy of Hogwarts, a school history and started reading. Maybe a little necromancer of the same age would be bored with such reading, but for him, this is a pretty good pastime. Fei Zhu meowed, rubbing against his legs and acting coquettishly. Yeting knew that she behaved like this because she wanted to play with her master, but Yeting was enjoying watching it at the moment, and he took it out of his bag casually. He stuffed Fei Zhu with a piece of fragrant grilled dried fish, and then casually touched her head, and that was considered a dismissal. Fei Zhu had no choice but to hold the dried fish in her mouth aggrievedly, walk out of the box and wander around. Yeting was very relieved about this. After all, Fei Zhu was a cat demon. Although she was still young, her intelligence was enough to take care of herself. After a while, she hurried back to the compartment and threw herself into Yeting's arms, as if someone was chasing her. No, someone was really chasing her. It was a girl who looked to be the same age as Yeting. She had thick brown hair and a pair of front teeth. She had already put on the uniform of Hogwarts. Yeting recognized her at a glance, because she was the same as when she was a child. Emma Watson is 7 points similar. Hermione Granger, the heroine of the Harry Potter series, is a smart know-it-all lady who has held the top spot in her grade for a long time. But the ending that J.K. Rowling arranged for her was to be with Ron, which was very disappointing. Chapter 10. The moment he met her, Yeting's first thought was not the strategy, cultivation, etc. that he had imagined for a long time, but why the story of the Harry Potter world would be so popular in his home world. Written as a novel and made into a movie, why is it that the heroine of the movie is so similar to the real Hermione Granger, but not exactly the same? He does not believe that the world of Harry Potter was created because of the emergence of the Harry Potter series of novels and movies. On the contrary, he prefers to believe that the world of Harry Potter influenced his world, thus making these works were created. However, he cannot prove this at present, but he believes that as he learns and researches magic, he will definitely find a way to travel between planes with his ability in time and space. He feels that he can always find the truth in his continuous journey through time. After coming back to his senses, Yeting began to look at the girl in front of him who was famous in his world. This is a proud girl, like a swan stretching its neck. From the appearance point of view, she looks very cute and is a beauty. "Is this cat yours?" she asked without greeting or introducing herself. "Can I pet it?" Meow. Fei Zhu whimpered and got back into Yeting's backpack, then revealed only a pair of bright eyes to observe in secret. "Definitely not, you scared Fei Zhu." Yeting raised his eyebrows speechlessly. He really couldn't figure out what the girl in front of him had done to scare Fei Zhu like this. "Himari? Why did you give your cat such a name? Is this some magical language?" Hermione asked curiously, and it seemed that her attention was completely diverted. "No, this is Japanese, meaning Fei Zhu," Yeting explained. "So you are of Japanese descent?" Hermione nodded in understanding. "No, I'm Chinese." "Then why did you name your cat in Japanese?" "Because I like it." Hermione's continuous questioning made Yeting dumbfounded. He didn't expect Hermione to be so curious. Fortunately, the little girl stopped and moved to another topic. "My name is Hermione Granger," she introduced herself. "I come from a Muggle family. No one in my family knows magic, so when I received the admission notice, I was very surprised, but also very happy. Because, this is the best wizarding school that I know of. I've memorized all the textbooks so I can catch up with you, so, what's your name?" She spoke very fast, and finished a long paragraph of self-introduction in one breath like a rapid-fire barrage. She also found an opportunity to show off her learning ability. "What a kid!" Yeting sighed secretly, and then introduced himself. "My name is Yeting. I come from a Muggle orphanage, so I don't know if I have necromancer blood. By the way, do you want to sit in?" Yeting invited. This invitation was not only out of curiosity, but also because he wanted to try to see if the so-called plot could be changed, and this experiment started with Hermione. Yeting plans to influence Hermione to make her enter Ravenclaw with him instead of Gryffindor. This will inevitably cause huge amounts of changes to the plot, and it may change beyond recognition in the future. In addition, he did think that Hermione's cleverness and studiousness were more suitable for Ravenclaw, hoping that the first to get the most advantageous was also one of his hidden little thoughts. Upon hearing that Yeting Yi came from Muggle society, Hermione immediately felt that the relationship between the two had become much closer. She happily accepted the invitation and sat across from Yeting, and the two started chatting about the magical world that suddenly appeared in their lives. Obviously, Yeting, who has read the original Harry Potter, has far more knowledge in this area than Hermione, and has an ability to learn beyond ordinary people. Soon, the little girl discovered that it is really difficult to maintain her pride in this area. Not easy. We have met our match. Hermione thought secretly in her heart, but at the same time she also recognized that Yeting was indeed a peer who excelled in studies. At this time, the compartment door was knocked again. Yeting opened the door. Outside the door were two girls slightly older than Hermione. One was a girl with brown hair and freckles, and the other was a black-haired oriental beauty, definitely still an embryo. She looked like they were forced to come here, both of them carrying luggage in their hands. "Hello, my name is Marietta." The brown-haired girl introduced herself. "She is my good friend Chu Zhang. She is Chinese. We saw that you are also an Oriental outside, so we decided to come and get to know you." "Hello." The black-haired girl nodded shyly to Yeting. Yeting introduced himself and Hermione to Marietta, and then turned to Zhang Chu and said in Chinese, "Hello, Zhang Chu, my name is Yeting." Hearing this, Zhang Chu opened his mouth in surprise. Hello, I didn't expect you to be Chinese too." She looked a little surprised, as if she were meeting an old friend in a foreign country, and the two happily chatted in Chinese. Chapter 11. The indifferent communication between Yeting and Zhang Chu made Hermione and Marietta quite dissatisfied and felt that they were being ignored. "What on earth are you talking about?" Hermione protested. "Can't you speak in a language that everyone can understand?" "Okay," Yeting shrugged and said in English, "So, do you want to come in and sit down? There are still free seats here." "Definitely." Marietta nodded cheerfully and pulled Zhang Chu, who was undecided about hesitation, in. With the two girls joining in, everyone became a little more reserved. No one spoke, and the atmosphere was a little awkward for a while. In the end, Marietta opened the situation. He looked at Yeting and then at Zhang Chu, and asked with some reluctance, "Are all you Orientals so beautiful? How can you call a man pretty?" Yeting complained. "But in fact, as handsome as he is, he can be called beautiful. Mrs. Gary has said more than once that if Yeting were put into women's clothes, he would be cuter than any other girl." Hearing what Marietta said, Hermione and Zhang Chu both looked at Yeting seriously, and then turned away shyly at the same time. The atmosphere became more awkward. Helpless, Yeting remembered his original purpose, which was to let Hermione enter Ravenclaw, so he deliberately asked, "Are you two also freshmen this year?" "No, we entered Hogwarts last year, and we are already in our second year this year." Zhang Chu shook his head. "So you have to call me senpai," Marietta added. "Okay, senior sister." Yeting rolled his eyes. "So, which college are you from?" "We are both Ravenclaw students." The two girls looked at each other and said in tacit understanding, "Ah, Ravenclaw." Yeting nodded pretendingly, "I hope I can be sorted into Ravenclaw this year." "What about you, Hermione?" "Gryffindor," Hermione replied. "I heard them say Gryffindor is the best." "Gryffindor is not the best, Ravenclaw is," Zhang Chu retorted. "Yes," Marietta agreed, "Gryffindor guys love nothing more than to sell their house to others. But in reality they are just a bunch of stupid and reckless fools." "You are prejudiced," Hermione pointedly pointed out. "No, I also think Ravenclaw is the best." Yeting expressed support for Zhang Chu and Marietta, explaining, "Necromancers gain power through knowledge. Ravenclaw represents wisdom and knowledge, and this exactly what necromancers should be pursuing." He concluded, "While courage, diligence, and shrewdness are all important to necromancers, wisdom and knowledge are their essence." Marietta and Zhang Chu both clapped. "Well said, you will definitely become an excellent Ravenclaw. Professor Flitwick will be delighted to meet you." After thinking carefully about Yeting's words, the proud Hermione had to nod her head. "I have to admit that what you said makes sense. Now I also hope to be sorted into Ravenclaw." At this point, his face was a little red. "Unfortunately, the sorting hat has the final say as to which house you want to be assigned to. If you are unlucky, you may be assigned to another house," Marietta reminded with some regret. However, Yeting, who had read the original work, immediately had a countermeasure. "I heard from others that there is still a way to change the sorting hat's decision. As long as you keep thinking about which college you want to go to, the Sorting Hat will also take your opinions into consideration. You can try it, and if it succeeds, we can stay in the same academy." When he said the last words, he looked seriously into Hermione's eyes. Being stared at by such a handsome guy, Hermione's face turned even redder, and she promised in a low voice, "I know, I will do it." Next, the four of them had a lively discussion about Ravenclaw. Basically, Zhangqiu and Marietta introduced Ravenclaw House, and then Yeting and Hermione made comments, and Zhangqiu and Marietta sometimes echoed agree, sometimes vehemently disagree, and then continue the cycle. The four of them were chatting happily and didn't even notice that the train had set off. At about 12:30, a woman with a bright smile and dimples pushed a food trolley past the booth. The four of them all bought some snacks from her and exchanged them happily. Yeting refused Marietta's BB's multi-flavor beans because he didn't want to taste the weird smell like boogers. Hermione was very interested in it and daring to eat several beans in a row until she was eaten by a Thai pepper. The flavored BB multi-flavor beans were so spicy that I drank several large glasses of water. What really interested Yeting was the pictures that came with Chocolate Frog. These cards with moving characters gave him a bold idea, to use this technology to create a trading card game, similar to Magic, The Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Hearthstone. He knows that there are games like Necromancer Chess in the Necromancer world, and collecting Chocolate Frog pictures is also very popular in the Necromancer world. So making a trading card game is definitely a future in the Necromancer world, and he can even become a rich man through it. He even thought of hiring Ravenclaw classmates to develop and produce cards. Such technology is not very advanced in alchemy. The students must be happy to earn a sum of gold galleons in their spare time, and here during this period, he can take the opportunity to screen out young necromancers with real abilities and officially hire them after they graduate. "I'm such a genius," Yeting thought, feeling proud for a while. Then, an accident interrupted his thinking. Chapter 12. A fat boy with a round face knocked on the cubicle door. "I'm sorry," he said with tears on his face, "I want to ask, have you seen my toad?" All four shook their heads and he immediately burst into tears. "I lost it again. It keeps trying to run away from me." "It doesn't matter, we'll help you find it together." Hermione volunteered to stand up. Then, she suddenly remembered something and turned around and asked, "You will also help together, right?" Sure enough, this is in line with Hermione's character. With this thought, Yeting stood up reluctantly and said, "Okay, I'll help find her too." Zhangqiu and Marietta looked at each other. Originally prepared to ignore the matter, they both sighed. In order not to disappoint their two new friends, they reluctantly joined the search. Seeing this, the round-faced boy was so moved that tears filled his eyes. "Thank you. Thank you. My name is Neville Longbardon, and thank you for your willingness to help me find a fortune." Yeting touched his head comfortingly. "It doesn't matter, we are all classmates, and classmates should help each other." And he paused, and said with some pride, "Looking for things should be left to professionals. Come." Under everyone's doubtful eyes, he shouted Fiju. With a meow sound, a cute little white cat came out of the school bag and jumped lightly into the boy's arms. What a cute kitten! Zhangqiu and Marietta had never noticed Fiju before, but now they were instantly attracted to Fiju. Yeting touched the kitten's head affectionately. "Fiju, we are looking for a toad. He is the owner of the toad, remember," he said while pointing to Neville. Fiju leaned forward and smelled him, then said meow to express her understanding. Yeting nodded with satisfaction and put Fiju on the ground. "Then let's go," he ordered. Following his order, Fiju walked gracefully in the train corridor, sniffing the air as he walked. Yeting followed behind with Neville and three girls. "Can she really understand you?" Hermione asked. "Yes, Fiju is as smart as a human being, so he can definitely understand," Yeting replied. "Then she must be a magical creature," Marietta concluded. "She is a catnivet? Or a cat with catnivet blood?" "No, Fiju is a cat demon," the boy denied. "I know the cat demon, which is a kind of Eastern magical creature monster." Hermione couldn't wait to answer. "Yes, the cat demon is indeed a monster." Zhangqiu, who is also Chinese, nodded. "My father told me that all animals and plants in the East may become monsters if given a chance." "How scary! Why would you raise a monster?" "If it were me, I would never raise a monster." Neville was startled after hearing this, and involuntarily took 2 steps slower and walked to the end of the team. What's so scary? Fiju is so cute. Yes, Fiju is not scary. Coward. The ladies all expressed their disdain for Neville. Generally speaking, girls are more afraid of these weird things than boys, but Hiju's cuteness captured them. They all said, even if she is a monster, as long as she is cute, it will be okay. Sure enough, appearance is justice in this world. Yeting touched his face with some emotion. It seems that my future is definitely bright. After walking along the corridor for a while, Fiju suddenly stopped and then turned into a cubicle. The 5 people immediately followed them, and saw 2 boys sitting face to face in the compartment. One of them had black hair and glasses, and the other was a red-haired boy. His clothes were a little shabby, and his outfit was somewhat similar to the movie characters. By their appearance, Yeting guessed their identities at a glance: the protagonist and savior of the original work, Harry Potter, and his follower, the man with flowers in cow dung, Ron Weasley, who married Hermione. The table in the cubicle was piled with snacks and packages. It looked like the 2 of them were enjoying the food, but the current scene was that the black-haired boy looked at Hiju curiously, while the red-haired boy cowered in fear, holding one hand in his hand. Holding a squeaking mouse, he held an old wand in one hand and pointed it at Fiju randomly. There seemed to be a green light coming out of the tip of the wand. Yeting was startled by his actions. In the original book, Ron would have accidents every time he cast spells randomly. Expelliarmus. Yeting flicked his wrist, and the purple wand immediately appeared in his hand. A red light shot out from the tip of the wand, hitting the red-haired boy instantly. He just heard him scream, and the wand in his hand flew out. Yeting casually stretched out his other hand and caught the flying wand gracefully. Cool, the boy wearing glasses exclaimed. You can actually use magic. What's this trick called? Hermione asked excitedly. Zhongqiu and Marietta were both so handsome in this electric scene, and they applauded him with admiration in their eyes. Thank you. Yeting nodded to them, then bent down and returned the worn wand to Ron. Sorry, I didn't do it on purpose, but please don't point the wand at my Fiju next time. Chapter 13. After being hit by Yeting's disarming spell, Ron Weasley seemed to be frightened, even stammering when he spoke. I know. He swallowed and finally regained his composure. I don't like cats. I thought he came in to eat my banban. Fiju won't eat such strange things. Yeting shook his head. He knew that the mouse banban was Peter Pettigrew's Agmenes, but he didn't intend to expose Peter just like that, because it would put him in trouble. The situation of being under suspicion. Why do you, a muggle who has just entered the magical world, know so much? Fiju also meowed and stayed away from Ron and his mice, apparently noticing Banban's weirdness. Yeting smoothly took Fiju into his arms, introduced himself to Harry and Ron, and also introduced the other 4 people. Finally, he explained, we're here to help Neville find his toad. But Neville was sitting in this compartment. Harry Potter pointed out this in confusion. Neville behind him nodded in agreement. At this time, the girls all cast suspicious glances at Yeting. Look, Fiju can't make a mistake. Yeting curled his lips, and Fiju also cast disdainful looks at everyone, despising their doubts about him. She jumped off Yeting's shoulders, jumped lightly onto a suitcase, and then scratched it with her cat's claws. This is my luggage, Neville blurted out. Yeting motioned for him to open the duffel bag. Fiju means that your leprosy toad is hiding inside. There's no way Lefou is in there, because I packed the suitcase myself. If Lefou was there, I would have known about it a long time ago. Neville muttered, but reluctantly, under Yeting's insistence, opened the suitcase. The result was as expected by Yeting. As soon as the suitcase was opened, a toad jumped out as if it had finally been freed. With the appearance of Toad, all the truth is revealed. Neville wasted a long time walking along the corridor, asking in each box one by one. But in fact, Lefou was always left in the suitcase. Fiju was proud now. She walked back and forth in front of everyone with her head held high, like a proud rooster. The girls' hearts melted when they looked at her cute and proud look. They didn't hesitate to express their praises, just thinking that they could touch Fiju with their own hands. But Fiju ran back to her master's arms easily, showing no mercy to the young ladies who praised her. Seeing that the matter was settled, the 2 groups of people who didn't know each other began to introduce themselves. When the black-haired boy wearing glasses said his name, Harry Potter, there was an exclamation of surprise. Is it really you? Hermione was a little excited. I know everything about you. Definitely, I bought a few extra reference books, History of Modern Magic, The Rise and Fall of Black Magic, Important Magical Events of the 20th Century, all of which are mentioned in these books. It's your turn." Upon hearing the news, Harry Potter looked puzzled. He never knew he was so famous. But in fact, as a typical example of fighting against the Dark Lord and escaping death, Harry Potter has long become a big celebrity in the necromancer world. Marietta and Zhang Qiu couldn't help but take a closer look at him. Zhang Qiu had lived in the Muggle society most of the time and had only officially entered the necromancer world for a year, so he had no actual experience with it. But Marietta was different. She even wanted to ask Porter for an autograph. Compared with them, Yeting was much calmer. He only expressed a slight surprise, and then briefly chatted with Harry Potter and Ron Weasley, who was somewhat ignored in Harry's limelight. Sentence, which made both Harry and Ron very impressed with him. Harry felt that Yeting did not just want to get to know him because of his fame. Ron was moved that Yeting did not just pay attention to the famous Harry Potter and ignore him. At this moment, he had even forgotten the conflict where Yeting had knocked away his wand a few minutes ago. Next, Yeting took the girls and said goodbye and went back. After they left, Ron cast an envious and jealous look at his back. "Isn't he just more handsome?" he complained angrily to Harry. "He can actually sit in a compartment with 3 girls. Although he is a nice guy, I dare say that if anyone walks with him, will never be noticed by any girl." Harry nodded in agreement. Although both of them felt that Yeting was a good person, boys always shared the same hatred of handsome boys. On the other side, the handsome guy they talked about hugged Feijo and returned to the cubicle with the 3 girls with a look of helplessness. Along the way, Hermione chatted with Marietta about Harry Potter and Voldemort. Of the two of them, one had read many books about the magical world, and the other's parents worked in the Ministry of Magic and were well informed. The two of them chatted endlessly about these gossipy topics, exclaiming from time to time. Zhang Qiu on the side also listened to their conversation attentively and chimed in from time to time. Only Yeting, who was not very gossipy, had nothing to say and could only read his own book. Chapter 14. Yeting was not bored reading alone, but soon the girls' conversation turned to him. They talked about the spell he had just cast and how to take out his wand. Hermione, who likes to get to the bottom of things the most, asked him the question first. "What spell did you use just now?" she asked. "It knocked the red-haired guy's wand away in one fell swoop." "That's a disarming spell." Yeting replied casually, "This is the most commonly used magic in necromancer duels. The spell is Expelliarmus." "I know this," Marietta said eagerly. "I remember that this spell was mentioned in the Black Magic Defense class, but the teacher said that we will not learn this magic until we are in a higher grade. You can actually use such a complicated spell. How did you do it?" Yeting, who is also a muggle, could use such a spell. This was obviously a blow to Hermione, so she couldn't wait to ask him. "The trick. Actually," Yeting explained, "this spell is not complicated. Rather, among all the spells that can be used in frontal confrontation, the disarming spell is the simplest. Although this spell is not very complicated. It has a powerful killing effect and is easily blocked by various counter spells, but it has an advantage that other spells cannot match." "What advantage?" Hermione asked impatiently. "It is the spell with the shortest syllables among dual spells and can be used the fastest. Using this spell can often give you an upper hand in a magic duel." Hearing this explanation, Zhang Qiu and Marietta both nodded in enlightenment and admired Yeting's rich knowledge. However, Hermione was a little unconvinced. She questioned, "I have never seen such a conclusion in the book. The disarming curse is the shortest spell. Which book did you read it from?" "I didn't read it in the book. In any spell book, I see someone mention the issue of different spells and their pronunciation. This is my own conclusion. I came to this conclusion after comparing several relatively simple spells commonly used in duels, such as the Stunning Curse, Obstacle Curse, Whole Body Binding Curse, and Dance Move Curse." Yeting replied. "But, since the book doesn't say that, how can you guarantee that this is the correct conclusion? You know, these books were written by the greatest necromancers, and even they didn't say that. Why can you think that this is the correct conclusion? Are you right? You are really a proud child. You are not willing to admit defeat at any time, so let me teach you to be good." Yeting thought this and criticized Hermione in a serious tone. "Miss Hermione Granger, you must have stopped studying Muggle science since you were admitted to Hogwarts, right?" "No. That's right, but what does this have to do with Muggle science? Hermione asked with a blush. It's very relevant. Although Muggle science is not as convenient and magical as magic, it is worth learning in terms of logic and methods of researching problems. Even when studying magic, it can be used as a reference. For example, to study the length of time to recite a spell, I only need to maintain my magic power and energy, use the same loud voice, the same speaking speed, cast different spells clearly and completely, and then cast them separately. Record the time so that you can roughly compare the length of the spell. This is the controlled variable method in science. Yeting explained seriously. Finally he concluded, the spirit of science tells us that only through practice can we arrive at the truth. It is not advisable to blindly believe in authority. Even the theory of Newton, a great man in the scientific community, has been proven to be not the truth in the contemporary era. There are limitations in many aspects. So, why do you think that the necromancer who wrote these magic textbooks is completely correct? After all, magic is not as rigorous as science. If the words of these predecessors are completely correct, then how were the new curses created? After all, these curses were not mentioned in the books of the predecessors. If you continue to reason according to your ideas, the entire necromancer the world will never progress again. This explanation confused Marietta, who was born in a necromancer family. In fact, many necromancers have poor logical abilities, but Hermione Granger, who was born in a Muggle family, and who has been in the Muggle world for a long time, Zhang could barely understand what Yeting was saying. This is the first time I've heard of such an idea. Zhang looked at her compatriots with admiration. You are really a genius in using scientific methods to study magic. Hermione was brought to tears by what he said. She has always been self-responsible and smart, and is not convinced by Yeting, but Yeting's theory is so reasonable that she cannot refute it. This puts her in an awkward position. She wants to refute but is speechless, and she wants to apologize but can't lose face. In the end, she chose to apologize. Yes, I'm sorry. She whispered, I admit that I was wrong, please forgive me. But before she finished speaking, she ran out, crying. Chapter 15. A dignified grown man, over 30 years old in 2 lifetimes combined, who ended up making a little lowly and a heroine cry, no one else. A man in his 30s bullied an 11-year-old girl until she cried. It would be embarrassing to tell anyone about it. Although his physical age is only 11 years old, Yeting has not yet realized that he is a child. Perhaps, before he was 7 years old, Yeting would still pretend to be in front of others, but as he grew older, he became more and more accustomed to handling things in his own way. This, in the eyes of others, is maturity beyond his peers. Seeing the little girl crying and leaving the cubicle, he sighed helplessly and chased her out. I always feel that he is a few years older than us. Marietta said, looking at Yeting's back. I think so too. Zhang nodded in agreement. Other boys of the same age will only be angry and will never take the initiative to admit their mistakes and comfort girls. In the corridor, Hermione looked at the scenery passing by outside the window, deliberately not looking back to let Yeting see her red eyes. Okay, don't be angry. Can't you just assume that I was wrong? Yeting walked up and touched Hermione's furry head out of habit. Definitely, this is his usual habit of comforting Feiju. This time, as if she had stepped on the tail of a kitten, Hermione turned back angrily and said coquettishly, Don't touch my hair, I'm not a child anymore. She suddenly turned around and almost hit Yeting's face. Then, the first thing she saw was Yeting's half-smiling eyes, and the distance between their cheeks was no more than 5 centimeters. Hermione brushed her face, blushed again, and quickly turned her head away again. Why, are you following me, out here? She whispered. I saw a little girl crying whenever she disagreed with her. I was afraid that her tears would drown the train, so I had to chase her out to stop her. This time it's more like coaxing a child. I won't flood the train with my tears. Hermione retorted reflexively, and then immediately realized that Yeting was just teasing her. So, she angrily hit him twice with her small fist. Okay, stop being awkward. It's not good to cry all the time. Yeting took her little hand that was coming over. This time, Hermione's face turned even redder. She had never been treated like this by a boy, touching her head and holding her hands. Especially, the person who treated her like this was such a good-looking boy. In addition, he also had knowledge that she admired. For a moment, she was so hesitant that she couldn't speak. She just struggled gently, but the force was so small that even an ant couldn't push it. It's a pity that Yeting has no experience in love, and he has never thought about falling in love with an 11-year-old girl. Under such circumstances, he will do some things that ruin the atmosphere. Just listen to him start like this, preaching to Hermione. In fact, different opinions often occur in study and research. When faced with someone who holds a different opinion than you, we should not argue with the other party in anger. But think carefully whether the other party's point of view is reasonable and acceptable. If the other party's point of view is more reasonable, we need to actively learn, absorb this point of view, and add it to our own knowledge system. On the contrary, we must think hard the loopholes in this point of view and refute the other party. So, crying cannot solve the problem. In this case, it is simply the teacher educating the students. The ambiguous atmosphere was immediately destroyed, but Hermione was also a unique primary school bully after all, so she nodded in understanding. However, inexplicably, she felt a little uncomfortable inside, and she was also a little bit inexplicably dissatisfied with Yeting. She had never been in love before, so she didn't know what the source of this discomfort was. If Zhongqiu and Marietta were here, they would definitely say that they are two weirdos. Mr. Yeting, Hermione said formally after listening, you are indeed a knowledgeable and good at learning. After entering Hogwarts, can I ask you for advice? Faced with little Loli's serious request, Yeting replied happily, definitely, I'm still happy to chat with a cute girl like you. Sometimes, he does forget his physical age and say things that are misleading. Hearing such words, Hermione's face, which had just returned to normal, turned red again, and she fled back to the compartment. In the cubicle, Zhongqiu and Marietta were gossiping and leaning their ears against the cubicle door, trying to eavesdrop on what Yeting and Hermione were talking about in the corridor, and how Yeting would coax Hermione. However, Hermione went too far when she first went out. The place where the two chatted was far away from the door of the compartment. As a result, Zhongqiu and Marietta didn't hear anything. Now Hermione ran back with a blushing face, and the approaching footsteps startled them both. The two girls instantly retracted to their original positions, pretending as if nothing happened, pretending to eat snacks and chatting, so that Hermione and Yeting, who came back one after another, did not notice anything. Strange. Chapter 16. Time flies. In a blink of an eye, it was already dark, and the train was finally arriving at Hogwarts Castle. Yeting happily chatted with the three little Lolita all afternoon and became friends with them, although he had always been a solo player before time travel, had no experience in love, and had not made many female friends. But it's no problem to deal with a few little girls. Just as they were packing their luggage and getting ready to get off at any moment, there were noises and fights outside the door. Yeting listened carefully, and he recognized the voices of Harry Potter and Ron Weasley. In addition, there was an arrogant voice that was very special. In Yeting's opinion, this must be Draco Malfoy. In Yeting's impression, Draco Malfoy was not a real bad boy. He was born into a family of pure-blood necromancers from the Holy 28 tribes. His parents and relatives were all Death Eaters. Naturally, he was influenced by what he heard and saw, and he had selfish thoughts, personality and arrogance towards Muggles. However, because Yeting is originally a Muggle, he is naturally opposed to Malfoy in terms of attitude, so even if he knows his true nature, Yeting does not want to have anything to do with this pure-blood necromancer. After all, training naughty children is also a task. A troublesome thing. Moreover, Yeting is currently focusing his energy on two places, studying magic and developing Lolita. He planned to verify his conjectures and research on the plot by influencing and changing the female lead Hermione. On the one hand, he lacked energy and it was more convenient to influence one person than three people. On the other hand, it was more convenient than three people. Compared to boys, he still prefers to deal with cute girls. Therefore, at present, he does not intend to have too much contact with Harry Potter and Ron Weasley on purpose. So, he just listened to the sounds outside the door. Malfoy and his two lackeys, Crabbe and Goyle, and Harry and Ron were arguing with each other and then fighting. The result is no different from the original. Malfoy is bitten by Scabbers, and then the two gangs leave. Finally, after a long journey, the train whistle sounded and its speed gradually slowed down. In the night, the tall black shadow of Hogwarts got closer and closer. Finally, they arrived at their destination, the Magic Academy that Yeting had been waiting for. The students were pushing and shoving and squeezed out of the train one after another. Yeting relied on his strength advantage to lead the three girls to fight a bloody path through the crowd. When I got off the bus, I saw a small platform. A rough voice shouted, "First-year students! First-year students, come over here!" The owner of the voice also specifically mentioned Harry Potter. Yeting knew that this was the voice of Hagrid, the gamekeeper of Hogwarts. He said goodbye hastily to the two sophomores, Zhangqiu and Marietta, and then pulled Hermione away to find the sound. Hermione was still a little uncomfortable with a boy holding hands and walking like this, but she still pretended to be calm and followed step by step. Hagrid deserves to have giant blood. His tall stature far exceeds that of various basketball players. Yeting can see him from a long distance away. All the freshmen stumbled along a path under his leadership. In a blink of an eye, the road came to an end, and what came into view was a large black lake. On the other side of the lake, a towering castle stands on a high hillside. The castle has many spears and windows twinkling under the stars. Hagrid arranged for the students to get on the boat. Each boat can accommodate 4 people. After Yeting and Hermione got on the boat, Harry and Ron also followed. Harry and Ron greeted them warmly. The fleet set off. Along the way, there was silence all around. Everyone was quietly admiring the stunning view of the huge castle on the cliff approaching the sky. From time to time, low sighs were heard from around them. After passing through a patch of ivy, the fleet followed a dark tunnel and seemed to arrive underground in the castle, finally arriving at a place that resembled an underground dock, and then climbed onto a ground of gravel and pebbles. The freshmen disembarked one after another and followed Hagrid to a huge amount of oak door. Finally, they arrived at the door of Hogwarts. Hagrid knocked on the oak door 3 times, and it opened immediately. At the door was a tall black-haired witch wearing an emerald green robe. She had a serious look on her face, and she looked very difficult to deal with. "First year, Professor McGonagall," Hagrid said. "Thank you, Hagrid. Leave it to me to take over from here." Professor McGonagall nodded and led the freshmen forward. After passing through huge amounts of foyer, Professor McGonagall led them to the other end of the hall, into a small empty room. "Welcome to Hogwarts," she said. "The opening banquet is about to begin. However, before you go to the restaurant to sit down, you must first confirm with all of you which house you will enter. The branches of this is a very important ceremony, because while you are at school, the house is like your home at Hogwarts. You will have classes with other students in the house, stay in the house dormitories together, and be in the house common room together. Spend your spare time." Afterwards, she briefly introduced the 4 colleges, mentioned some precautions, and then asked the freshmen to wait for a moment before she left. Chapter 17. As soon as Professor McGonagall left, the crowd immediately became noisy. The freshmen exchanged excitedly, guessing each other's method of sorting and the college they wanted to enter. "Do you think we can be assigned to Ravenclaw?" Hermione touched Yeting and asked uneasily. Although the little girl is proud, she is still a little uneasy when facing the strange magical world. "Definitely," Yeting encouraged categorically. "I heard that Hogwarts has a talking hat. After a new student wears it, it can assign him to the appropriate college based on his personality. What if my personality is not suitable for Ravenclaw?" Hearing this, Hermione became even more uneasy. In fact, in the original book, the Sorting Hat evaluated Hermione as suitable for Gryffindor and Ravenclaw, but finally chose to sort her into Gryffindor. In other words, Hermione is suitable for Ravenclaw. But in order to prevent accidents, Yeting still told her how to decide on her own. "I've heard of this method. A strong desire will change the Sorting Hat's mind," Yeting suggested. "As long as you strongly express that you want to join a certain college, the Sorting Hat will consider your opinion." Hermione nodded doubtfully, feeling a little at ease. But on this side, Ron intervened. "Why should you join Ravenclaw? Believe me, Gryffindor is the best house." He said this in a loud voice, which immediately attracted the attention of the freshmen around him. At this moment, he felt like he had poked a hornet's nest, and he was instantly overwhelmed by all kinds of words. Some freshmen loudly retorted, believing that Slytherin was the best house, while others expressed their support for Ravenclaw. Other young necromancers who liked Gryffindor loudly supported Ron. The place was as noisy as a vegetable market. Yeting took Hermione and left the center of the crowd, finally getting rid of the noisy freshmen. "Don't talk to fools, you'll get infected," he said. Hermione was amused by his words and felt much less nervous inside. The noise continued for some time, but suddenly the sounds turned into high-pitched screams. Waves of screams like those from a horror movie attracted the attention of Yeting and Hermione. They turned around when they heard the sound, and the smile on the little girl's face immediately disappeared. She opened her mouth wide and almost screamed. This is no longer like a horror movie set, this is just a horror movie set. About 20 ghosts suddenly jumped out of the wall. The pearly white, translucent ghosts glided across the room, whispering to each other, paying little attention to the first-year students. They seemed to be arguing about something. Compared to the frightened freshman, Yeting was much calmer. Instead, he was very interested in the physical condition of these ghosts. Because looking at all the works with a magical worldview, only ghost in Harry Potter has a normal mind and is not affected by negative emotions. Apart from being different from people in that it is difficult to affect real matter, they have basically the same thinking mode as ordinary people, and even have their own society. In comparison, ghosts in other worldviews have very low intelligence. Without thinking about ability, either harboring hatred and thinking patterns that are very different from humans, or longing for reincarnation, without any nostalgia for reality, and without much joy, anger, sorrow, or joy. All in all, they tend to be inhuman existences. Unfortunately, he currently has neither the ability nor enough knowledge to study ghost. However, he is still determined to conduct a comparative study of these ghosts one day in the future. Now, Yeting had no choice but to calm down the nervous Hermione in a low voice. Girls are always afraid of things like ghost. Then, they heard Ghost talking to the freshman. New life. A chubby monk smiled at them and said, I think you are probably preparing to take the test. Some students nodded silently. I hope you can be sorted into Hufflepuff, the monk said, I used to study in that house. Move forward now, a thin voice said, the sorting ceremony will begin soon. Professor McGonagall is back. The ghosts drifted one by one and disappeared through the opposite wall. Now, stand in single file, Professor McGonagall said to the first years, and follow me. Following the crowd, Yeting passed through a double door and arrived at a luxurious restaurant. They never imagined that there would be such a magical, wonderful, and magnificent place. Students from other classes in the college were sitting around 4 long tables. Above the tables, thousands of candles floating in the air lit up the restaurant. 4 tables were set with gleaming gold plates and goblets. There is another long table on the table at the top of the restaurant, which is where the teachers sit. Professor McGonagall took the first years over there and lined them up facing all the senior students, with the teachers behind them. Chapter 18. The candle light flickered in the lobby, and the hundreds of faces watching them looked like pale lanterns. Ghosts were also mixed in among the students, shining with hazy silver light. Looking up, I saw stars twinkling on the velvet black ceiling. Yeting heard Hermione whisper, the ceiling here has been enchanted and looks like the sky outside. I read about it in Hogwarts, A History of the School. It's hard to believe that there really is a ceiling up there, and it's also hard to believe that the roof of the restaurant isn't open to the air. Professor McGonagall gently placed a 4-legged stool in front of the first-year students, and placed a pointed necromancer hat on the stool. The hat was patched, worn, and dirty. Yeting knew that this was the legendary sorting hat, and he began to look forward to that classic scene, the sorting hat song that changed every year. Then the hat twisted. A wide slit opened in the brim, like a mouth. And the hat began to sing, you may think I'm not pretty, but never judge a book by its cover. If you can find a prettier hat than mine, I could eat myself. You can make your bowler hat black and shiny, keep your top hat sleek and crisp. I am the magic hat used for testing at Hogwarts. Naturally, it is superior to your hat. Any hidden thoughts in your mind? The singing lasted about 5 minutes. After the magic hat finished singing, the audience burst into applause. However, Yeting felt that he really couldn't appreciate the strange singing. He thought the applause just now was quite insincere. The sorting hat bowed to each of the 4 tables, then stood still. The next step is the official branching. Professor McGonagall took a few steps forward, holding a roll of parchment in her hand. Whoever's name I call now will put on his hat, sit on the stool, and wait for the sorting. She said, Hannah Abbott. This is a rosy-faced little girl with 2 golden braids. Yeting remembers that in the original book, she finally married Neville. She stumbled out of the queue and put on her hat, which barely covered her eyes. She sat down, and after a moment's pause, Hufflepuff, shouted the hat. The people at the table to the right applauded and cheered Hannah, welcoming her to their table. Susan Burns. Hufflepuff, shouted the hat again. Susan quickly ran over to Hannah and sat down. Terry Butt. Ravenclaw. Hermione Granger. After a few names, it was Hermione's turn. The little girl almost ran to the stool, then looked back uneasily. Yeting smiled and nodded at her. Her nervousness eased slightly, and then he hurriedly put the hat on his head. This time, the Sorting Hat did not report out of the house immediately, but was stuck for 2 or 3 seconds, and then reluctantly spit out Ravenclaw. It seemed that Hermione and it had a conversation in their minds, and the little girl successfully persuaded it to change its decision. Great! Yeting clapped his hands excitedly. This is not only because Hermione was successfully assigned to Ravenclaw, but it also means that the plot is not unchangeable, and it may even mean that the destiny represented by the plot does not exist. The little necromancers at the second table on the left clapped their hands and applauded. Cho Chang and Marietta stood up and introduced Hermione to the students. Then the Sorting Hat announced many more names, and the crowd kept shrinking. When it was Neville's turn, the fat boy ran to Gryffindor with his hat on, completely forgetting to take it off, which caused quite a joke. Finally, Ting. Yeah, this unique name attracted the attention of the little necromancers. Yeting walked out of the crowd gracefully and came to the Sorting Hat under the spotlight. He wears a clock tower standard cloak. The handsome and neat design of the cloak is different from the dark and old-fashioned cloaks of young necromancers. Coupled with his outstanding appearance, Yeting makes him a favorite among young necromancers, especially girls. Among them, it caused countless exclamations and discussions. The boys wanted to know where such a beautiful cloak came from, while the girls wanted to know who such a handsome person was. Yeting held the Sorting Hat in his hand. The smooth feel made him fully understand how dirty it was. Coupled with the strange smell that hit his nostrils, it made him feel like he was holding a rotten orange. He wanted to throw it out immediately. Holding back his nausea, Yeting put on the Sorting Hat. As soon as it touched his head, the Sorting Hat screamed loudly, startling the teachers and students of Hogwarts. It's strange. This is the first time that I can't see the thoughts of a new student. In his mind, the funny voice of the Sorting Hat sounded, in your mind, I only see a chaos transformation. World, what have you done? I don't know either. Yeting pretended to reply in his mind, but he realized that the experience and training in the time and space tunnel not only brought him unlimited progress in ability to understand time and space, but also perhaps he has a tough and impenetrable soul. Chapter 19. There is no way to see through Yeting's thinking, and the Sorting Hat cannot make a judgment on him. It hesitated for a while, until Professor McGonagall urged it, and then it gave up. Okay, then I'll make an exception. It's up to you to decide where to go. Which college does Mr. Ye want to go to? Ravenclaw. Yeting replied. Ravenclaw, shouted the Sorting Hat, and then left another sentence in his mind, I will remember you, child. Most of the students in Ravenclaw were girls. Seeing such a handsome boy being assigned to Ravenclaw, they cheered with joy and warmly welcomed Yeting. Yeting sat among the girls and politely responded to their enthusiasm. Most people wanted to get to know him, and the senior students couldn't wait to have a romantic date with him. This made Yeting have to decline them one by one. During this period, he also heard Hermione and Zhongqiu complaining about Shameless. Others asked him about the origin of the cloak, and Yeting introduced his design and Madame Malkin's shop to them, which, as expected, aroused admiration and praise. This is the first time he has faced so many girls at the same time. If he had been in college in his previous life, he would have been so nervous that he could not speak. But now, he can handle it with ease. Definitely, college girls are much harder to deal with than the girls at Hogwarts. The last sorting house to make a splash was definitely Harry Potter. Everyone wanted to see the boy who lived. When he was sorted into Gryffindor, there were loud cheers and the Weasley twins shouted, "We have Potter! We have Potter! There's Potter!" Even Gryffindor's ghost welcomed this. The last 3 people. Lisa Dupin became a new student in Ravenclaw. Ron Weasley was sorted into Gryffindor. Blaise Chibnall was sorted into Slytherin. Albus Dumbledore stood up. He looked at the students with a smile on his face and stretched out his arms to them. Nothing seemed to make him happier than to see the students gathered together. "Welcome," he said, "welcome everyone to Hogwarts to start the new school year. Before the banquet begins, I want to say a few words. That is, idiot. Crying nose. Residue. Screw. Thank you everyone." He sat down again. Everyone applauded and cheered. But in reality, all the little necromancers were confused by his last words. What does that sentence mean? Hermione frowned on the side. Don't worry about that, Zhangqiu replied, Dumbledore is a great necromancer, but he is a little crazy. He's not crazy. Yeting interrupted, read these words backwards in Latin, which means may Merlin bless you. Do you know Latin? Hermione was so surprised that she didn't even notice that the pumpkin pie in her hand fell to the ground. Yes, when I decided to go to Hogwarts on the second day, I started to learn Latin, Yeting replied while enjoying a plate of roast lamb in front of him. I also learned ancient Celtic French and Old Norman, which are historically important and mythological languages. I thought they might be needed to learn magic, and it turns out that I was right. An ancient Celtic and Old Norman. I don't even know what they are. The girls were all amazed at his genius and erudition, especially Hermione, who was also a top student. I was convinced by Yeting. In front of a truly evil genius, even a top student would feel ashamed. Next it's time to eat. Yeting thoroughly enjoyed the food at Hogwarts. Although Britain's dark cuisine is well known to the world, the wizarding world in Britain is completely different from the Muggle world. He is overwhelmed by these delicacies. Except for being a little too sweet, Yeting can basically praise every dish. If I were from Shanghai, I would like them twice as much. This was Yeting's final evaluation, but even Zhangqiu didn't get what he meant. After everyone had a full meal, Dumbledore waved his wand casually, and in an instant, all the dishes disappeared. He stood up and the restaurant returned to silence. Oh, now that everyone has eaten and drank enough, I want to say a few more words to you. At the beginning of the semester, I want to put forward a few things to pay attention to. First-year students, please note that all woods on campus are prohibited for students to enter. Some of our classmates from the old class should also remember this. Furthermore, the administrator, Mr. Filch, also asked me to remind everyone not to cast magic in the corridors between classes. The review of Quidditch players will be held in the second week of this semester. Students who are interested in participating in the college team please contact Mrs. Huoqi. Finally, I must tell everyone that anyone who does not want to suffer an accident and die in pain should not enter the corridor on the right side of the fourth floor. The freshmen were talking a lot, and Hermione also asked Zhangqiu curiously. But even Zhangqiu was baffled by the last one. She said that this rule was new this semester. Only Yeting knew that the biggest surprise in this school year came from this corridor. However, judging from the lively discussions among the students, the legend of 7 mysteries on campus is quite popular in both the East and the West. Chapter 20. When the discussion among the young necromancers subsided, Dumbledore made his next decision. Now, before everyone goes to bed, let's sing the school song together. Dumbledore said loudly. The other teachers' smiles seemed to freeze. Dumbledore flicked the wand, and a long golden ribbon flew out of the wand. It twisted like a snake above the high dining table and coiled up lines of text. Yeting could see that this was Hogwarts. Here are the lyrics to the school song. Everyone chooses the tune he likes. Dumbledore said, get ready and sing. Then all the teachers and students sang loudly. The sound was so unpleasant that Fiju, who was sleeping soundly in his backpack, was awakened by the chorus, covered his ears and screamed meow. Everyone finished singing the school song. Only the Weasley twins continued to sing along with the slow melody of the funeral march. Dumbledore directed the last few bars for both of them with his wand, and when they finished, he applauded the loudest. Music, he said, wiping his eyes, is more charming than anything we do here. It's bedtime now. Let's go back to the dormitories. The freshmen followed the college prefects out of the lobby and walked through the corridors. Yeting recognized the Ravenclaw prefect. Her name was Pinello Cravat. She had long brown curly hair, and her beautiful appearance exuded elegance and intelligence. To Yeting, her charm was far beyond what she is now. Hermione and Zhangqiu are still little Lolita. Yeting was extremely interested in this girl who was largely ignored in the original novel but frequently appeared in fanfiction. She and another male prefect took the eaglets to the west tower of the castle, the top of Ravenclaw Tower, in front of an old bare wooden board with an eagle-shaped bronze door knocker. Unlike other colleges, the Ravenclaw Lounge does not have a password. You can only enter by answering the question on the door knocker and getting approval. Pinello explained. She knocked on the door and her eagle mouth opened immediately, but instead of a bird call, a soft, musical voice uttered a sentence. What underscore will underscore you underscore break underscore once underscore you underscore say underscore it. So, is anyone willing to give it a try? She looked at the freshman expectantly, especially looking twice at Yeting. In terms of appearance alone, he surpassed all the freshmen including girls, so even though Pinello is more interested in connotation, he still has a very high initial favorable impression of him. Meeting the expectant gaze of the female class leader, Yeting stood up happily. "Silence! Silence!" he replied. "Well said." The eagle-shaped door knocker expressed his appreciation, and the door suddenly opened. "Isn't this just a brain teaser?" Yeting was speechless. This door problem was too easy to solve. But in fact, due to the lack of corresponding basic education, most young necromancers lack the ability to reason logically, so for smart Ravenclaws, riddles are often safer than passwords. Pinello nodded appreciatively to Yeting, her favorable impression of him greatly increased. This is because he not only has a charming appearance, but also has good intelligence, and then introduced to the freshman, "Congratulations to you. I am Prefect Penelope Cravat, and I am delighted to welcome you to Ravenclaw House. Our emblem is an eagle, soaring high and unreachable, our color is sky blue and bronze." Next was a long speech introducing Ravenclaw, including Ravenclaw's great achievements, Ravenclaw's characteristics, evaluation of other houses, etc. Finally, she mentioned Ravenclaw's ghost Grey Lady, Ravencrow's daughter. She will help the Ravenclaw students. The Ravenclaw common room is a large circular room with elegant arched windows on the wall and hanging blue and bronze silks. Ravenclaw students can see the beautiful scenery outside through the windows. Landscape. The ceiling is a dome with stars on it, as well as stars on the dark blue carpet below. There are tables, chairs, and bookshelves in the room. There is a white marble bust of Rowena Ravenclaw in the alcove opposite the door. A door next to the statue leads to the dormitory above. The two prefects took the freshmen to their dormitories respectively. The dormitory is a quadruple room, with four four-poster beds and dark red flannel curtains hanging from the top. Yeting opened the box, packed his belongings a little, and then carried Feiju to the bedside. Feiju looked full of energy at night, rolling around on the velvet quilt with excitement. The names of the three roommates are Anthony Goldstein, a blonde Jewish man, Terry Butt, with brown hair, and Michael Koner, a black-haired man. They are all supporting characters with names and plots in the original work. They, Yeting, plus Kevin Entwistle and Stephen Cornford from another dormitory, these are the only 6 boys among the Ravenclaw freshmen this school year. They can't even make up the 2A dormitory. But in fact, Ravenclaw has always been dominated by girls. In terms of the number of boys, this year's freshmen have far exceeded the previous ones. After a brief greeting to each other and the new roommates, everyone put on their pajamas and fell down to sleep. The journey to school is truly exhausting. Chapter 21. Yeting held the kitten in his arms and sat half-sitting on the soft bed, reading a book while thinking a lot. It has been 11 years since he came to this world. He has also changed from an ordinary mortal to a necromancer who is new to magic. The mysterious door is about to be officially opened to him. From tomorrow on, he can learn the secrets of magic in this castle and explore the reality of the world. Even with the soul of an adult, he was still too excited to sleep. After all 3 roommates fell asleep, Yeting got out of bed and came to the fireplace. Feiju followed curiously, and she also remembered that the master's once-a-month summoning was about to begin. This is Yeting's awakening ability since he was 6 years old. As his sense of time and space constantly improves, he will often feel the throbbing in his heart. Then, at the age of 6, he finally had enough mental strength to follow that throbbing feeling, communicate with the other world, and summon. However, most of the time, his summons yielded nothing, and the things he occasionally summoned were common items with nothing special about them, such as food, gravel, daily necessities, and the like. Fortunately, he can occasionally get some specialties from the world, and some of the specialties even have special powers. Dolan Ring, Konoha Forehead Protector and other items come from this way. Most of the specialties, that's all. He was able to summon Feiju just because of his luck. And this time, his good luck came again. A crack opened silently in the void, and a big thing was spit out as expected. It was a mechanical punk-style metal ball with a diameter of about 1 meter. It made a muffled sound when it fell to the ground. It seemed to be heavy. He stretched out his hand to touch it, but before he could react, the ball opened automatically. Just like a lotus flower unfolding from its bud, the shell of the ball opens neatly to reveal everything treasured within. Curled up in the ball is a beautiful girl whose whole body is made of clockwork and gears. She has golden hair and a silver shell or skin. And there was a huge amount of clockwork keys stuck in the girl's back. There was no need to read the information sent during the summons. Yeting could tell who she was just from her appearance. Valoran Continent, Clockwork Demon, Oriana. Regarding the origin of Clockwork Demon Oriana, Riot Games gave two theories. The first theory is that the creator of Clockwork Monster created the robot after his daughter Oriana died unexpectedly. In the second bell, Oriana was once a girl with flesh and blood, but an accident in the lower reaches of Zon indirectly caused her to become seriously ill. Her declining body had to be replaced with sophisticated artificial organs, one after another, until there is no human body left in the body. Oriana herself is good at precision machinery manufacturing, and her mechanical heart and spherical golem are all made by herself. According to the virtues of the so-called scientists in Valoran, their so-called science is actually not the same thing as science on Earth. It is a kind of magical technology unique to Valoran. In other words, the precision machinery manufacturing that Oriana is proficient in actually includes part of Valoran's magical knowledge. A collision between the magic of Valoran and the magic of the Harry Potter world? It's a nice idea, but the first priority is to find out what's going on with the Clockwork Demon. But how to wake up, or activate the mechanical girl in front of me? Yeting studied for a long time and finally came up with the most obvious way, winding up. What is the significance of the prominent clockwork key behind Oriana? Perhaps, being a starter for Oriana is also a possibility. He walked behind the Clockwork Demon and tried to turn her clockwork key. The twisting of the clockwork was easier than expected. Yeting was able to turn it with just a little effort. When the shaft turned, it made the sound of springs and gears, but it immediately became quiet, as if a machine that had not been used for a long time was starting up again. Finally, it got rid of the initial lag and became smoother. Only the feel of twisting the clockwork constantly reminded Yeting that he was in front of a mechanical creation. The clockwork was turned counterclockwise for about 3.5 times by Yeting before it reached the end. After he let go of his hand, the clockwork began to rotate clockwise at a constant speed and slowly. With the rhythm of this rotation, Yeting could feel a spiritual sensation. The throbbing, a soul awakened in the mechanical body in front of him, and established a contract-like connection with his own soul. This feeling also appeared when Fijo was summoned. This is probably his summoning technique, a contract signed between the summoned creature and the summoner after summoning the creature. He could feel that he was in charge of the contract, and the souls of Oriana and Fijo had no secrets in front of him. As the clockwork continued to rotate, the lines on the surface of Oriana's mechanical body began to glow with magic. Yeting turned around and looked at the three roommates. They were not awakened. After about dozens of seconds, the brilliance gradually dissipated, and then, Oriana suddenly opened her eyes. The pair of crystal-like pupils made of crystal emitted a golden shimmer. She sat curled up on the ground, her little face hidden behind her knees, and only her crystal eyes were revealed, staring at Yeting. There was a spirituality in her eyes that a machine could not have. Chapter 22. At the moment, she was looking at Yeting, and Yeting was also looking at her. Their eyes collided. "Hello, Oriana." Yeting stretched out his hand to her. "Hello, Dad, nice to meet you." Oriana was so happy that she took Yeting's hand and stood up. Her voice is very pleasant, but her pronunciation is in a typical mechanical style, and her tone is not even as human-like as artificial intelligence assistants like Siri. However, Yeting can hear human emotions that cannot be expressed by Siri and others. Her hands were cold and warm, covered with delicate lines. When he pulled her up, Yeting felt it was a little difficult. After all, it was an all-metal mechanical body. According to his estimate, she weighed about 100 kilograms. Oriana stood up, holding the metal skirt with both hands, and gracefully performed a standard curtsy to Yeting. Then with a move of her right hand, she unfolded it on the ground. The metal shell that was originally used as packaging immediately closed and folded into a diameter. The gears on the surface of the half-meter metal ball began to move, and a silver-blue light emerged from the inlaid crystal, and then it floated smoothly. It turns out this is her golem. The clockwork demon finally fully unfolded before his eyes. Seeing this, Yeting was finally able to ask the question that had been holding back in his mind for a while. "Oriana, why did you call me Daddy?" However, he didn't get the answer he wanted. "Daddy is Daddy" was her answer. Next, Yeting made some inquiries about her ability. The well-behaved Oriana told her everything, allowing Yeting to get a general understanding of her. Oriana, the clockwork demon, does have human intelligence. However, because the core of her thinking is based on magic technology and soul technology, and is characterized by personality formation rather than calculation, she does not have the same computing power as a computer. This is the difference between magic technology and science and technology. They are also the core of intelligence. The former is stronger than the spirit and soul, while the latter is better at calculation speed. However, Yeting believes that this can be upgraded. As long as you use the form of magic, simulate electronic technology, create a CPU, and unify the writing language of the CPU and the core of soul thinking, you can make the magic cup become another brain of Oriana. This allows the soul thinking core to focus on personality and emotions, and the CPU to focus on calculations. Oriana will be able to become a Superman artificial intelligence that not only has a human thinking model, but also has the same logic and calculation capabilities as a supercomputer. In terms of knowledge reserve, Oriana behaves like an amnesiac. Her memory of past experiences is completely blank, but she has enough common sense in life. In addition, she is indeed quite proficient in the precision machinery manufacturing of magical technology. Although Oriana is a long-range hero in League of Legends, in reality Oriana has quite strong close combat capabilities. Her metal shell is stronger than expected. At least conventional missile-level physical attacks cannot shake her metal shell. Moreover, she is also very resistant to magic. Driven by the Hex Crystal Heart, the Clockwork Demon also has strong power, and its maximum output can reach several tons or even dozens of tons. In addition, she also has the ability to launch spell missiles from her palms. This is equivalent to the level A of Clockwork Demon in the game. She also has an anti-gravity system that can maintain her suspension. At maximum output, it can be equivalent to flight, but the speed cannot exceed the speed of sound. The most important thing is that as a mechanical clockwork demon, she can continue to upgrade herself. As long as she has enough advanced technology, she can become infinitely stronger, whether it is to increase her strength or install a variety of external weapons. It doesn't matter if you want to increase the speed even faster. The most powerful ability of Clockwork Demon lies not in her origin, but in her ball-shaped mechanical golem. All the spells of the Clockwork Demon exist around the demon puppet. This golem is an autonomous mechanical body. It originally has a certain amount of intelligence and will follow Oriana and assist her. Oriana can impose special commands on the golem to make it exert magical effects: command, noise, command, attack, command, defense, and command, shockwave are just the four most typical ones. Yes, in fact it can do more. After getting to know Oriana, Yeting felt full of surprise and excitement. The thin and stiff-looking machine girl in front of him was indeed powerful enough. In the world of Harry Potter, in most cases, it is enough to protect Yeting, who is not yet powerful now. Even when facing Voldemort and Dumbledore in their heyday, she still has enough ability to escape with him. But now he faces his biggest problem: how to hide Oriana and her golem. It was completely impossible for a girl who was 1.62 meters tall and a metal ball with a diameter of half a meter to hide it from the eyes of his classmates and Dumbledore, but how could he explain Oriana's existence to others? Finally, Yeting reluctantly came up with a solution: the shrinking spell. This was the first spell he learned and the one he is currently most proficient in. He plans to use the shrinking spell to shrink Oriana to the size of a figurine file, and then he can take her with him like a toy. In his opinion, since the necromancer chess pieces in the Harry Potter world are all alive, it is not surprising if he comes up with a moving figure. The only problem is that the shrinking spell cannot be effective on living creatures, and for mechanical life forms like Oriana, I don't know how effective it will be. Then give it a try. Yeting took out his wand and pointed it at Oriana lightly. Quickly shrink. Fortunately, the shrinking spell took effect on the mechanical life, and Oriana was successfully shrunk to the size of a hand file, and the golem also turned into a small metal ball. Oriana happily climbed up Yeting's arm onto his shoulder, then jumped on Fei Zhu's body and had a great time riding her. Feeling that there was the same contract between Oriana and Yeting, Fei Zhu also played with her happily until Yeting grabbed her neck and lifted them to the bed. Before going to bed, Yeting asked a question in a low voice. Oriana, what is your wish after coming to this world? I want to be with my dad forever, and then take a good look at the world. Chapter 23. In fact, unlike Yeting's imagination, Oriana's appearance still caused a certain sensation. After all, as a handmade doll, she is too delicate and beautiful. Yeting's 3 roommates all wanted to take a closer look at her. Michael Koner even wanted to take her in his hands and play with her, but they were refused without hesitation. Oriana shyly crawled under Yeting's cloak and got under his cloak. He went into his coat pocket and only exposed his head to observe secretly. Since then, Yeting has become Ravenclaw's most popular student, regardless of whether he is a boy or a girl. The boys patted the team and wanted to see Oriana with their own eyes, while the girls were attracted by his appearance and cute hijau. As a result, whether he was in the Ravenclaw common room or at the dining table, he was always surrounded by people, chattering to him. But there are exceptions. Hermione will act with him in most cases, euphemistically saying they study together, while Zhangqiu always goes back and forth with him in his original circle of friends, but these two girls don't let him, he's bored. There was another person, the beautiful prefect Pinello, who did not watch him. Although she made no secret of her fondness for him, she would never do anything that would offend him. Due to being harassed for a long time, Yeting had no choice but to keep a cold face in most situations in order to make strangers retreat. The result of this was that he was portrayed as aloof in the eyes of most people. Boys and girls finally began to stop approaching him. But what was counterproductive was that Yeting's popularity among girls it's getting higher and higher. These girls even called him God and Heartthrob. Whether these people have Stockholm Syndrome or tremors, he doesn't know. As for boys, so far, only 3 of his roommates have actually made friends with him. Especially after learning that he was a muggle born in an orphanage, the Slytherin boys began to consciously reject him. "You're just a vain mudblood," Draco Malfoy once commented on him in front of him. The result of his doing so was that the entire class was hung upside down from the ceiling of the corridor under the upside-down curse. It was not until after class that he was rescued by Professor Snape, who came after hearing the news. For this, Ravenclaw was deducted 10 points, but no one blamed Yeting. Gryffindor's little necromancer was even more fond of him. But for Yeting, these welcomes or resistances are meaningless. His biggest purpose besides studying the plot is to learn magic. In fact, to the professors, Yeting is definitely a good student. Whether it is a shape-shifting class, a spell class, or a potions class, he can complete the teacher's tasks perfectly, and no classroom questions can trouble him. Definitely, there is also the famous Miss Know-It-All. This pair of inseparable academic masters are deeply loved by the teachers. Ravenclaw's house scores have never risen so fast. They were also regular guests at Madame Pance's. After class, the two of them would always go to the library to continue studying, and Zhangqiu would also study with them until they completed their homework. For Yeting, this kind of study reminded him of his high school days, which made him feel a little nostalgic. He has always been a person who can endure learning, and when the content of learning is not boring high school courses, but interesting magic, he can't wait to spend all his time in it. This kind of enthusiasm for learning puts even Hermione to shame. Coupled with his original learning ability, Yeting's learning progress soon reached the level of a higher grade. Definitely, his learning process was not without obstacles. In his opinion, the writing of technical and academic books on the magical world is quite unreasonable. All authors are quite casual when writing books. They will spend a lot of gorgeous and useless words to describe, and even mix them with long psychological descriptions and records of their own behaviors. This makes people feel this is not a magic book, but the author's autobiography. In addition, the masters of the wizarding world also choose professional vocabulary quite casually. In their academic circles, there is no such thing as scientific names. Most academic terms rely on conventions. For the same magic, different authors have different descriptions, and they are quite random, which often makes people confused. They also don't have professional names or academic language. As a result, Yeting often spends a long time sorting out the knowledge after reading the book, because he needs to eliminate 80% of the useless rhetoric and running accounts, and also compares it with what is mentioned in other books. Yes, there may be some overlap, because often 2 books mention the same spell, but use different names and different descriptions. Then, he will record his results in more professional and concise words. Now that school has started less than a week ago, he has already filled up half of his notebook. He believes that the notes he recorded using academic papers and the professional vocabulary system he built are more concise and effective than these magic books. He estimated that by the time he had completed his goal of enrolling, reading all the books in the Ravenclaw Common Room Library and the Hogwarts Library within 7 years, the notes he had taken would be enough. It completely contains most of the knowledge system in the magical world. Chapter 24. In Yeting's eyes, except for Professor Quirrell in the Black Magic Defense class, there is no doubt that the professors at Hogwarts are all professors with profound attainments. Even the gloomy and awkward Snape was still worthy of being a potions master in his eyes. The only two subjects he found difficult to accept were history of magic and defense of black magic. Yeting felt that for him, the history of magic class was of little use. Memorizing the time of the Goblin Uprising and the establishment of the Magic Act was meaningless. The teacher of the black magic defense class, Killua, was not only stupid, but also had ulterior motives. Yeting could not learn anything from him. So during these two classes, he always skipped classes and hid in the library. Professor Binns in the history of magic class had no idea about this. This ghost, who had lived for almost 1,000 years, had very limited knowledge of the students, and he had never even called the students by their names correctly. Professor Quirrell, on the other hand, dared to be angry but dared not speak. He himself is a cowardly person, and Voldemort lives in his head, which makes him suspicious every day and dare not cause trouble at all. In addition to studying, other parts of life at Hogwarts are quite interesting, such as the stairs at Hogwarts. There are a total of 142 staircases. Some of them are wide and big, some are narrow, small, and rickety, some lead to a different place every Friday, some go up halfway, and a step will suddenly disappear, and you have to remember where it is. Should jump over. In addition, there are many doors here that will not open for you if you ask them to open them rudely or poke them in the right place. There are also doors that are not real doors at all, but just a block of doors that appear to be doors solid wall. It's hard to remember what is where because everything seems to be constantly moving. The people in the portraits are constantly visiting each other, and even the knights in armor can walk. For Yeting, just seeing all this in movies and actually experiencing it are completely different things. These moving stairs, which appear interesting in movies and novels, have brought a lot of trouble to his daily actions. He felt that anyone with a little bit of a wanderlust would be extremely lost in Hogwarts. The characters in the portraits will not have any impact on him, but as a polite person, it is tiring to greet the portraits frequently. However, the caretaker Filch, who was the most timid to the little necromancers in the original book, and his old cat Mrs. Norris did not cause him any trouble. On the one hand, it's because he doesn't cause much trouble, and on the other hand, Fei Zhu's existence makes Mrs. Loris always stay away from Yeting. As a cat demon, Fei Zhu is regarded as the eldest sister among all the cats in Hogwarts. All cats, even those with cat-nivus bloodline are no exception, listen to her. When Yeting was in class or in the library, Fei Zhu would sometimes wander around the castle by herself, and no one would hurt her. The students all liked her, even the twin troublemakers George and Fred, and in the end Peeves, who can tease people, will subconsciously stay away from her, probably because she is a cat demon. As a result, people can often see a white kitten leading a group of cats of different file sizes and colors swaggering through the castle, which has become a new wonder at Hogwarts. Sometimes, even Oriana would ride on her and hang out with her. In addition to the above, there is another thing that attracts Yeting's most attention at Hogwarts. This matter made him both looking forward to and struggling with it. That's broom flight. In fact, Yeting still has expectations for Mrs. Huoqi flight class. After all, flight is a long-standing dream of mankind. He himself always thought about being able to fly freely in the sky one day. With his current level of magic, flight is still an unrealistic dream. This is also because the world of Harry Potter originally did not have direct magic related to flight. But right in front of us, there is a shortcut to achieve this goal, a flying broomstick. For Yeting, flying is cool, but riding a broom is too stupid. As cool as flying a sword is, riding a broomstick is stupid. That's his point. But Hermione didn't think so, perhaps because of the cultural differences between East and West. Even Zhang Qiu, a Chinese who grew up in the UK, felt that riding a broomstick was not a big deal. Ever since the news that Neville broke his leg during flight class reached Ravenclaw, Miss Know-It-All became even more nervous about the flight class that had not yet started. She borrowed a copy of The Origins of Quidditch from the library and read it carefully several times. In her spare time, she kept reciting some of the flight instructions in this book, and pestered Zhang Qiu, who had outstanding flight skills, and repeatedly asked her to describe the feeling of flying on a broomstick. Even the good-tempered Zhang Qiu was confused. Take the trouble. The rest of the little necromancers were also a little uneasy. As the flight class approached, more and more little necromancers began to talk about flight and Quidditch. Among the new students, those students from necromancer families would talk loudly about how they used broomsticks to play games during the holidays, and the new Muggle-born students could only express envy of them. Thanks to Bailey Jihao for the 588-point reward and reminder for the update. It is the first time for a newbie to be rewarded and urge the update. It is really touching. It makes me feel that my writing is valuable. I am an old book fan, and I am quite familiar with Japanese ACGN. I have also read European and American works such as Marvel, Harry Potter, D&D, Ice and Fire, etc., and I have also played Blizzard games, Steam, and publisher games. These are my sources of inspiration and material. I have had ideas about writing novels for a long time, and I have tried a little bit in the past few years, but I can't even get through this, so I have never published it. I have been thinking deeply about writing a novel for a long time, and finally officially decided to write it. After all these years of reading and playing, how can it be done with only input and no output for a long time? In fact, the outline has already been prepared, and Harry Potter is only the first world. I can't say how many tens of thousands of words I plan to write, but I have actually prepared plots for several worlds, and this is just the beginning. Thank you all for your support in terms of collections, flowers, monthly tickets, evaluation votes, etc. I will work hard to write the plot and bring you a unique magical journey. If you have comments and suggestions, please leave a message in the comment area. Another account of the author will respond in the comment area. I will carefully consider everyone's opinions, views on the plot, and content you want to add. Chapter 25. Finally, Yeting's first flight class began. Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff took this flight class together. The total number of freshmen in the two houses was about 30 or 40 classmates. The place where classes are held is a flat lawn with a forest at the end of the lawn. In the distance, black trees swayed in the wind. Before they arrived, about 40 brooms had been neatly arranged in the field. Yeting once heard Zhongqiu complain that the brooms at Hogwarts were so old that they had more or less problems. Some brooms would tremble when they flew too high, and some had deviations in the direction of flight. Bad habit of leaning left or right. Soon, their teacher Mrs. Huoqi came. She has short grey hair and her eyes are yellow, like the eyes of an eagle. Okay, what are you waiting for? She snapped. Everyone stand next to a broomstick. Quick, quick, hurry up. Yeting was in the middle of the team and picked up a crooked old broom in disgust, with wooden branches poking out in disorder. Hermione stood next to him, curiously holding an almost bare broom and looking at it carefully. Put your right hand on top of the broom handle, Mrs. Hooch shouted from the front, and then say, get up. Get up, everyone shouted. Yeting didn't shout, he just recited it silently in his mind, but the broom still obediently came into his hand. It was not difficult for him to silently issue such a simple command that was not even a spell. But for little necromancers, only a handful can do that. Hermione Granger's broom just rolled on the ground, while others' brooms didn't move at all. None of his three roommates made it, with Terry Boot and Anthony Goldstein getting tangled up in their brooms, and Michael Connor's broomstick smacking its owner in the face with its handle. After noisy for a while, everyone moved on to the next step. Mrs. Hooch showed them how to ride on a broom without falling off their heads. She walked around the group correcting their hand grips. Okay, as soon as I whistle, you kick your legs off the ground and push hard. Mrs. Huoqi said, and he also regarded Neville as a counterexample. His movements were not standard enough, and his kicking was too impatient. As a result, after flying, he couldn't control it, flew into the forbidden forest, and broke his wrist. Hold the broom steady, rise a few feet, then lean forward slightly and drop straight back to the ground. Listen to my whistle. 3, 2, 1. Chaos ensued again. Many people fell to the ground before flying half a meter. Hermione barely managed to steady her broom and it took a minute to levitate in the air. Perhaps because Padma Patil is of Indian descent, her broom took her flying in the air and performed acrobatics. Many little necromancers looked up at her with envy. But Yeting clearly saw that her face was pale and she was clutching the broom with both hands. This acrobatic was probably not what she wanted. Justin Finch-Fletchley's broom kept spinning him around until Justin fell dizzy and fell to the ground. Yeting was the best flyer among them. He flew into the air easily. What does that feel like? The air blew through his hair, and his robes fluttered behind him. Everyone became smaller and smaller in his eyes, and Hogwarts gradually became visible. He could hear the sounds coming from the ground, the screams of girls, the envious shouts of Terry Boot and others, but as he constantly rose and accelerated, even the sounds seemed to be forgotten in the end. Back. In fact, as he continued to exercise day after day, his body was steadily evolving and getting stronger. Today, his physical fitness, balance, and reaction ability have long exceeded the limits of human beings, which allows him to control a flying broomstick better than anyone else, and is enough to perform many difficult actions. He just rode his broom and shuttled through the sky of Hogwarts. He swooped through the bridge hole, circled the tower several times, and even did a few rolls while swooping. The rapid flight deeply stimulated his nerves, and the adrenaline made his blood boil. In the past, he had always been calm. Even in his previous life, he had never done anything too outrageous. But now, this kind of flight made him discover another side of himself, the desire for excitement and challenging the limits. The feeling of conquering life and death in the intertwining of life and death made him unable to stop. Perhaps I am not a law-abiding person by nature. Thinking this way, he flew more and more boldly. He thought of the flight stunts he had seen at air shows. Those flight pilots were able to complete so many dazzling and exaggerated technical moves in the cab, indirectly flying the aircraft through the handles and instrument panels. Now he controls the broomstick with his own hands, and his operability and flexibility are several times better than those of flight pilots. Those movements are what it may not be possible. He rode his broom back over the lawn. There was plenty of room for him to practice his stunts, there was definitely a sense of showing off, and he started trying. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you're notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.